Hokage. I managed to survive until I became the boss of Sannin. Chapter 61. For the sake of fairness, do you want to consider 3 people coming together? Hearing Kagura's extremely arrogant words, the 3 genin from Konoha opposite were stunned for a moment, but they didn't feel much anger. After all, they knew in their hearts that Kagura was telling the truth. The 3 of them went together just to make the battle more fair. As genin from Konoha, they are still very aware of the strength of this senior known as the monster. In fact, when they learned that their group was going to face Kagura, they had already given up on the possibility of advancing. But Kagura's proposal gave them another glimmer of hope. But the 3 people did not answer immediately, but turned their attention to the 2 examiners on the field. Seeing the reactions of the 3 people, Kagura also looked at the 2 examiners and said, "This is what I asked for. I am the one who suffers the loss, so it shouldn't be considered a violation of the rules." The 2 examiners looked at each other, and when the long-haired examiner nodded slightly, the bald examiner said in agreement, "If you insist, we have no problem with it. But if you lose, the next game still has to be played according to the normal rules." Quote. Regarding the examiner's words, Kagura and the 3 people nodded in agreement. In fact, if the people who are teaming up with Kagura at this moment are those from his 7th class. He even wanted to say that as long as he lost, their group would just admit defeat. But given the current situation, even without asking Toshiro, he knew that the other party would most likely not agree to such a crazy proposal. Seeing that the examiner also agreed with this suggestion, the 3 people stopped being pretentious and jumped over the high platform to the ring at the same time. Looking at the 3 people with different styles in front of him, Kagura showed a smile on his face. In fact, although he didn't know these people, he had probably guessed their backgrounds. Although the 3 of them are all wearing Konoha's most common combat uniforms, they are very different in appearance. First, there was the person in the middle with black hair. The slightly too long hair was combed into a pineapple head and tied back. He has a pair of steady black eyes, with a faint dark circle under his eyes. To his left was a handsome man with long yellow hair. The long hair was combed into a single ponytail and hung loosely behind her back, and her knife-carved facial features were more of a European and American-style face. As for the last person, he was a fat man with a simple face and a body comparable to the watermelon mountain pufferfish ghost. In addition to the tights, he also wore a simple armor made of iron sheets. Kagura had already seen the ability of the handsome man with long yellow hair during the written examination. It was the person from the Yamanaka clan who used the heart-turn jutsu to cheat. Coupled with the obvious appearance and body style of the other 2, these 3 are obviously Konoha's famous, anar, deer, and butterfly, combination. The fat man should be a descendant of the Akamaiki clan, and the man in the middle is the think tank of the group, a member of the Nara clan. As the examiner's voice announced the start of the battle, the 3 people immediately dispersed their positions and made a wary fighting stance. The 3 of them exchanged glances with each other, and then the Nara descendant suddenly formed a mudra. As his handprints changed, the shadow behind him suddenly stretched out and stretched towards Kagura. It is the secret technique of the Nara clan, shadow imitation. The companions on both sides were not idle either. The handsome young man with yellow hair had already completed the hand seals and was waiting for his companions to control the enemy before he could activate ninjutsu immediately. As for the fat man from the Akamaiki clan, he has doubled his right hand 5 times, intending to restrict Kagura's movement through attacks. But he just raised that huge right arm, but he was stunned on the spot. Because Kagura, who they had originally expected to dodge, now stood motionless on the spot with no intention of evading. The black shadow successfully connected with Kagura's shadow, and there was a black line connecting the 2. Kagura's body began to move uncontrollably, and finally assumed a gesture that was exactly the same as the opponent's. Feeling the restrained feeling in her body, Kagura felt a sense of novelty. Although his body is controlled, his eyes and speech can still be controlled by himself. He looked at the yellow-haired boy not far away who was about to activate ninjutsu, and said to dissuade him, "I suggest you don't use the heart-turn technique on me, otherwise you may get hurt." Hearing Kagura's words, the man was slightly stunned. He was not surprised that Kagura saw the ninjutsu he was going to use, but he couldn't figure out how he could be injured. But the situation at this time couldn't help but make him think too much. As the saying goes, the arrow was on the string and had to be fired. As his last hand seal was completed, the long-contained ninjutsu was finally activated. Heart-turning technique. As he muttered silently, he felt his eyes go dark. When he gained sight again, he found that the surrounding environment was different from what he thought. Heart-turning jutsu is actually a spiritual ninjutsu that allows one's soul to enter the enemy's body. At the same time, it can also force the enemy's spirit to enter a sleep state, thereby achieving the effect of controlling the enemy's body. If it works according to the normal effect, I should have controlled Kagura's body at this time. And there should be 3 people including his own body in his line of sight. But now, let alone the figure, he found that he was not even in the arena. There was darkness all around, and even under his feet was a floor that seemed to be made of obsidian. Ouch! Just when he was wondering whether he had fallen into Kagura's genjutsu, a sound similar to that of a puppy suddenly came from behind him. He looked behind him warily, but saw no one. Ouch! As the cry came again, he looked at his feet. At this time, sitting at his feet was an animal that looked like a fox and a canine. It is pure white all over, and its hair even faintly emits some fluorescence. Its tail was swaying constantly, and it was obviously in an extremely excited state. I don't know if it was an illusion, but he even saw complex emotions such as curiosity, confusion, and excitement in the dog's eyes. He slowly squatted down, but before he could take a closer look, a cat meowed from another direction. He heard the sound and saw a cat that was also pure white but had 2 tails walking leisurely towards him. But when the cat saw the puppy, its original elegant posture disappeared in an instant. Its eyes instantly turned into vertical pupils, its body was arched, and the hair on its body stood on end. The puppy-like creature also made a defensive gesture. It leaned down towards the cat, its tail raised high behind it, and it showed the fangs in its mouth and roared. The moment the 2 unknown creatures confronted each other, the atmosphere of the entire space suddenly changed. Although the real fight between the 2 did not begin, in an instant, the quiet and peaceful atmosphere was visible. He felt that the cute puppy in front of him exuded an indescribable pressure the next second. His whole body was trembling uncontrollably. This was the instinctive premonition of creatures facing natural enemies. His feet went soft, and he could no longer maintain his body's balance and collapsed on the ground. He didn't know why he was so frightened, even his teeth were chattering up and down unconsciously. Although I wanted to stay away from the white puppy, I found that I couldn't even do this action. As the confrontation between the 2 creatures gradually intensified, the inexplicable pressure became stronger and stronger. Just when he felt like he couldn't hold on any longer, Kagura's voice finally rang in his ears. I told you not to use that ninjutsu on me, why didn't you listen? I told you not to use that ninjutsu on me, why didn't you listen? As Kagura's voice came, he turned his head and looked towards the voice as if he had found a savior. At some point, Kagura suddenly stood behind one of them and 2 beasts. With the appearance of Kagura, the 2 little beasts immediately stopped their confrontation. The tsunami-like pressure also disappeared, leaving only the yellow-haired boy slumped on the ground, panting. Kagura sighed helplessly and waved her hands towards the 2-tailed beasts. The 2 little guys seemed to have seen their master and immediately ran towards him. But when they came to his feet, they glared at each other fiercely. Kagura shook her head, bent down and picked up the 2 little guys. The 2 beasts and 1 beast occupied Kagura's chest. At this time, they no longer fought, but gently pressed their heads against Kagura's chin while squinting to enjoy Kagura's embrace. Looking at the 2-tailed beasts that he had raised as pets, Kagura couldn't help but have a headache. Now there are only 2 of them, and he can still coax them like this. If all 9 are present in the future, will he have to use Shadow Clone in his body to coax the child? Kagura, who was worrying alone, didn't see the yellow-haired boy beside him, who was staring at him with an expression as if he had seen a ghost. Those 2 animals that looked like ancient ferocious beasts a second ago were now as docile as cats and dogs and were held in his arms. I must have not slept well in the forest last night, which caused me to have nightmares today. After coaxing the pets, Kagura finally put the 2 little guys down and patted their butts gently. After receiving the signal, the 2 beasts left here obediently, walking slowly forward while reluctantly looking back at Kagura. After the 2 little ones finally walked away, Kagura turned her attention to the young man lying slumped on the ground in front of her. Looking at the other party's dull expression, Kagura thought for a while and advised. The ninjutsu of your family is quite special. If you encounter a special case like me, it will become like this. Special case. The Yamanaka boy who finally came to his senses looked at Kagura and asked. What does special case mean? Who are you? Kagura shook her head and did not answer his question. Sharingan appeared in his eyes, and the yellow-haired boy's eyes gradually became dull as he looked at him. Kagura activated Distinguished Heavenly Gods and muttered. Hey, it's really troublesome. He had to erase his recent memory. By the way, I have to give him a subconscious order not to use the mind-turning technique on me in the future. In reality, only 1 second had passed since the yellow-haired boy activated the heart-turn technique. In the surprised eyes of the other two companions, the yellow-haired boy had just activated ninjutsu, his body froze, and he suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were full of fear and confusion. Looking at Kagura in front of him, he moved the corners of his mouth slightly and said to himself. No way, you, hiss. You. By the way, what happened just now? How could I forget? Listening to the disjointed words, the two companions beside him looked at each other with confusion in their eyes. But Kagura on the opposite side just smiled slightly, raised the index finger of her right hand to her mouth, and shushed softly, as if to remind the other party to keep secrets. The Nara boy standing in the middle looked at Kagura's movements, his eyes even more confused. But before he could think about it, his body suddenly froze. Wrong. Isn't he under the control of his own shadow mimicry? Why can he make moves? When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was doing exactly the same actions as Kagura. Looking at the horrified expression on the opposite side of Pineapple Head, Kagura said. Your adults never told you. Will the shadow imitation technique be less effective against an enemy whose strength far exceeds one's own? Kagura said while moving her right shoulder. The pineapple-headed boy opposite him also followed his lead and made the same move. The pineapple-headed boy immediately released his ninjutsu without any hesitation. After all, judging from the current situation, he was not sure whether he controlled Kagura or Kagura controlled him. Seeing the black shadow on the ground disappear, Kagura showed a smile that showed success. The admonition he just said was actually false, just to frighten his opponent. As a secret technique of the famous Nara clan, how could it be so weak? The difficulty of this secret technique is how to smoothly connect to the enemy's shadow. After all, the activation speed of this ninjutsu is not very fast. It is not difficult to avoid it as long as you are prepared. But once you are connected, it is not that simple to get rid of it. You must know that in the original plot, Shikamaru, who had just become a Chunin, used this trick to hold down 9 enemies alone. In fact, those actions just now were made by Kagura after secretly using Distinguished Heavenly Gods on the pineapple-headed boy, causing him to subconsciously do it on his own. It was just that coupled with Kagura's deceptive words, it made him think that he was being controlled by Kagura. After seeing his two companions inexplicably defeated by Kagura, the fat man from the Akamaiki clan finally stopped waiting. To him, those ninjutsu are a bit flashy, and only strength is the most direct way to fight. As he grunted, the huge right hand grew bigger again. At this time, he has used the limit of what he can reach now, the 20 times doubling technique. Looking at the giant-like arms, a trace of envy flashed in Kagura's eyes. When it comes to which ninjutsu he most wanted to draw in the system before, it was neither the Rasengan nor the Flying Thunder God, but the doubling technique in front of him. By the way, the second most important thing in Kagura's heart is the harem technique. After all, it is a magical technique that even Otsutsuki Kagaya fell into. Ahem, yes, that's all it really is. Closing parenthesis. This is the ninjutsu that men dream of. Only the idiots of the Akamaiki clan can only use it on their arms or to double their whole body. Ninjutsu should be used in a greater direction. And what disappoints Kagura is that is the Akamaiki clan's secret technique. Even if the opponent uses the doubling technique directly in front of him, he can't use Sharingan to copy it. Looking at the fat man flying toward him with his giant hand raised high, Kagura only had a look of loneliness on his face. Although he didn't understand why his opponent suddenly became so frustrated, Fatty didn't think too much. The giant's hand was like an Optimus Prime falling from the sky. It seemed to be slow, but in fact it hit Kagura very quickly. The huge impact directly shattered a quarter of the arena, and countless pieces of gravel burst out, even splashing onto the distant auditorium on the high platform. The candidates on the high platform were in a panic, trying to avoid the flying stones. After the stones flew away, a huge dust mist began to fill the entire space. Bang! With a soft sound, the huge arm returned to normal size. The fat man looked nervously at the completely destroyed arena, as if he wanted to see a certain figure through the fog. However, before the dust mist dissipated, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. That figure is none other than Kagura. Kagura came to him, suddenly leaned down, and kicked his right foot to the side, hitting his chin. Following his kick, the seemingly heavy fat man was actually kicked into the air. Kagura's figure flashed again and quickly moved behind the fat man in midair. Bandages appeared from the cuffs of his long sleeves at some point. With a slight wave of his hands, the bandages tightly bound his opponent, and his hands also hugged his opponent's body. As he twisted his waist, the two of them suddenly fell toward the ground in a high-speed rotation. This is one of the 2B level skills that Kagura has extracted from the system in recent years, Primary Lotus. In fact, in the official introduction, Primary Lotus is a forbidden technique. But this ninjutsu is difficult for me to rank together with the A-rank Chidori, so I will rank it as AB rank. Closing parenthesis. With Kagura's current strength, there are many simple ways to deal with such an opponent. So why does he still use such flashy moves? That's of course because he's so handsome. For men, this reason is enough. Seeing the whirlwind falling rapidly, the remaining two people on the stage showed despair in their eyes. Judging from the impact of this, the fat man would probably be half disabled if not dead. Just when the whirlwind was about to land, they couldn't bear to close their eyes. However, the expected sound of impact did not come. After a second, they opened their eyes in confusion. At this time, Kagura was standing astride the ring, and the fat man was wrapped into a dumpling by the bandage on his hand. The fat man's head was now less than 10 centimeters away from the ground, and a drop of cold sweat flowed from his forehead and dripped onto the floor. Kagura smiled, untied the bandage, and put the fat man in his hand on the ground. He just wanted to look cool. After all, these were his own people from Konoha, so there was no need to be harsh. The fat man, who felt like he was on the verge of death, sat on the ground and kept panting. The three of them looked at each other, and then said helplessly, "We admit defeat. It can be said that the water Kagura released in this battle can fill the ocean." Naturally, the three people inside could not fail to see this. Since others have given face to him in this way, it seems a bit ignorant to still resist. So even though they still had the ability to continue fighting, they still gave in quickly. With the end of this battle, this fourth assessment finally came to an end. Under the leadership of the long-haired examiner, the failed candidates followed him and left the venue. Toshiro and Uchiha Shizu came down from the high stand and walked to Kagura's side. Toshiro said to Kagura with a smile, "Well, it seems I made the right choice. This time I was successfully promoted thanks to your thighs. I really want to thank you." Quote. Looking at the smiling Toshiro, Kagura was disapproving Kaido. "I don't think you can't advance without me. The reason why I rushed down is just to protect those people." After all, he stared at Toshiro's only exposed eye and continued with a hint. "After all, your ability might hurt them." Hearing this, Toshiro's eyes narrowed. In these several assessments, in order to hide his strength, he firmly believed that he had not revealed his abilities in front of anyone. But listening to Kagura's words, it seems that he knows his true identity. Seeing Toshiro's suddenly solemn expression, Kagura smiled with satisfaction. "Who do you, a half-grown boy like you, play with? As a time traveler, how could I not know your true identity?" Toshiro, that will be the examiner for the ability test of the fourth Raikage Abbey combination, Juniu Thunder Plow Hot Knife, in the future. Although he doesn't appear in many scenes in the plot, the two ninjutsu he displays are both protective ninjutsu. But Kagura clearly remembers that this guy has the blood inheritance limit of lava style. In the original plot, another person with lava style's blood inheritance limit is Four Tails Jinchuriki Lousy. The ninjutsu created by its chakra are all related to magma, and are very powerful, with outstanding attack effects. Therefore, Kagura has reason to believe that this seemingly honest and steady Toshiro must also have a powerful aggressive ninjutsu that cannot be underestimated. What he just said, "Your ability could hurt them," was no joke. The two looked at each other, and then shifted their gaze with tacit understanding and evil intentions. Uchiha Jing on the side didn't seem to notice the little movements of the two. She put her hands together nervously and thanked her quietly. "Thank you, Brother Kagura. I will work hard in the next games." Kagura didn't respond much to this tribesman who seemed to have his own secret, and just nodded politely. As the losers left, all the promoted players gathered on the stage. Looking at the 15 candidates who finally stayed after passing through many tests, the bald examiner finally showed a gentle smile. He applauded and said, "First of all, congratulations to you for overcoming many difficulties and getting here. I believe everyone has guessed that the Chunin exam is not completely over. You still have a final test. But the good news is that your exam is over today." Quote. As he spoke, he pointed with his finger to another door in the opposite direction from the one who just lost the election and said, "You will come out from here with me later, and we will leave here by taking a boat and go to Kurigakure village. And your final exam will be held in Kurigakure village 3 days later." Quote. After saying that, he took the lead and walked towards the door, and all the candidates followed closely behind him. Tsunade and the other 3 came to Kagura's side again and started discussing in low voices. "Hey, you still want to go to Kurigakure village? We just killed a group of their Chunin not long ago, will there be trouble in the past?" Jiraiya spoke first without any worry. Hearing his question, Tsunade and Orochimaru also frowned. Kagura said leisurely, "Don't worry, it's precisely because of this that we will be safer." His words were not arbitrary, but had a certain reasoning behind them. As the organizer of this Chunin exam, it is bound to attract the attention of many forces. In this case, the safety issues of these candidates who have passed the examination become even more prominent. This is just like the Olympic organizers on Blue Star. All actions will be put under a magnifying glass and attract the attention of many people. Especially candidates in special circumstances like Kagura and others will be protected by the top management of Kurigakure village. Nothing can happen to the 4 of them during this period, at least not until they leave Kurigakure village. Although Kagura did not explain his judgment, the 3 people who were always accustomed to him taking the lead couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief after hearing his words. After all, over the years, Kagura's judgment has basically never made any big mistakes. Looking at Uchiha walking in front of the team, Kagura lowered his head and thought for a moment, then said to the 3 of them, "You guys go forward, I'm going to ask something." The 3 of them didn't ask what he was going to ask, they just nodded and walked forward. Kagura looked back and saw the person she was looking for at a glance. He slowed down his pace and slowly came to Toshiro, who was walking at the end. Facing Toshiro's questioning eyes, Kagura took the initiative and asked, "I noticed that you seem to be very wary of that girl named Uchiha Shizu. Can you tell me why?" He is not one of those protagonists in novels who clearly discovers a problem but does not seek the answer, but leaves problems behind for himself. Now that he has discovered the clue, he will directly ask for the reason. Hearing Kagura's question, Toshiro was not too surprised. He compiled his sentences for a moment before speaking. Kaido. At the end of the last assessment, when everyone lined up to hand in those forehead protectors, I was lined up behind that girl. So I noticed that what she handed over was a blood-stained forehead protector with the Konoha symbol on it. Quote. Hearing this, Kagura couldn't help but frown. Seeing that Kagura understood the meaning of his words, Toshiro continued. And, I discovered a detail. Everyone, including you, has some legacy from the battle. I can tell this from clothes or wounds. But that girl, her clothes and appearance were exactly the same as when she first arrived on the island. Quote. After saying this, Toshiro stopped talking and quickened his pace to keep up with the large team in front. Kagura behind him was lost in thought. Also Konoha's forehead protector. You know, even the group of 7 ninja swordsmen would deliberately avoid people from Kurigakure village in the forest and choose people from other villages to attack. And this Uchiha Shizu, who seems to be weak and quiet, attacks people in her own village without hesitation. And her neat clothes and appearance showed that her battle in the forest was almost overwhelming without any suspense. Even he himself was inevitably covered in a lot of dust after the battle in the forest. Looking at the back of the clansman girl from a distance, Kagura seemed to see a shadow that could not be seen through. As if feeling Kagura's gaze, Uchiha Shizuo, who was walking, suddenly turned around and met Kagura's gaze. Seeing Kagura's gaze, she showed a shy expression, then immediately turned her head and walked forward as usual. Looking at the extremely ordinary girl, Kagura's intuition told him that this Chunin exam might not be that simple. Following the bald examiner, everyone passed through the door and passed through a secret passage, directly arriving at a small port. At this time, there was already a large ship waiting at the port, and several ninja guards from Kurigakure village could be seen on the ship surrounding it. Arriving at the boarding port, the examiner waved his right hand and said to everyone, "Everyone, please come up." As a country with a unique terrain like many small islands, the Kingdom of Water has its own unique features in shipbuilding technology. Seeing the ship in front of them, which was obviously larger than what they usually see, everyone except Genin, who was originally from Kurigakure village, couldn't help showing expressions of admiration. Well, except Kagura. As a time traveler, he has never seen any kind of ship. This kind of ferry is not as good as the ferry he took in his previous life. The small number of people quickly arrived on the boat. Except for a few people, most people still maintained an excited state, leaning on the edge of the boat and looking at the sea. As the ship moved, they left the small island where they had been fighting for a day and night, and headed towards the largest island in the middle of the sea. But only 10 minutes later, the candidates who were leaning on the side of the boat returned to the deck in disappointment. Because at this time the ship sailed into an area of dense fog. The thick fog made it impossible to see clearly even the places farther on the deck, not to mention the sea view. At this time, Kagura finally realized why the ninja village in the land of water was called Kurigakure village. Well, according to this theory, could it be that there are some very high mountains over there in the Kingdom of Thunder? Otherwise, why would it be called Union Village? It's just that I don't know how the ship found the accurate direction in this heavy fog and sailed towards the hidden mist village. However, this journey was not as long as they imagined. As the four Kagura chatted, they had arrived at their destination in just 2 hours. After the ship docked, everyone got off the ship one after another. At this time, the thick fog had long since disappeared. Looking forward along the road to the pier, one could directly see the entrance gate of Wuin village. It has to be said that Konoha has played an exemplary role in many aspects. The other 4 countries have made many imitations based on Konoha's model, such as the establishment of shadows, the establishment of villages, etc. Like Konoha village, in front of them was a village surrounded by mountains and walls. There was also a towering huge entrance on the front. Looking at the village gate in front of her, Kagura couldn't help but feel a little excited. Over the years, he has been to the Kingdom of Water a lot due to his missions, but this was his first time entering the Hidden Mist village. After all, in this world, the ninja villages in various countries are equivalent to the status of their military legions. In a place like this, there will naturally be strong precautions, just ordinary civilians, but they will be very wary of ninjas from other forces. The bald examiner stood in front of everyone and gave his final instructions. The final assessment will be held in 3 days, and someone will take you to the specific location that day. In addition to our Mizukage-sama, Hokage-sama and Reikage-sama will also be here to watch your competition during this assessment. Therefore, these days are also a time for you to rest and adjust. I hope you can perform at your best. Quote. As he said that, he suddenly turned his head to look at Kagura and said, "Here, we will have dedicated personnel responsible for your safety. So no matter what happened before, you can rest peacefully in the village. You are welcome to visit the civilian areas and commercial areas. But like some places that are expressly prohibited, I hope everyone can restrain their curiosity and not break in casually. Otherwise, it will not be a good thing for us or for you." Quote. Kagura, who was stared at by the examiner's substantial eyes, twitched the muscles on her face several times unconsciously. No, does this bald guy have a grudge against me? Why do you have to stare at me every time you say these things? Do I look like the kind of person who would cause trouble everywhere when he has enough to eat and nothing to do? In fact, this is not the examiner's intention to target Kagura. In fact, among this group of genin, he is the only one who has the strength to secretly break into the village's secrets. So when I was explaining, I couldn't help but look at Kagura. After knowing the hotel where they would stay for the next few days, everyone could move around freely. It was 12 noon when they arrived at the 4th assessment site today. After that, they had nearly 20 duels. Adding in the travel time, it was almost evening before they knew it. At this time, half of the sun had fallen below the horizon, and on the other side of the horizon, the dark night sky began to gradually occupy the sky. Just when Kagura and others were preparing to discuss the next itinerary, a weak figure approached them. Several people turned around and saw that it was Uchiha Shizu. At this time, she was lowering her head, her 2 index fingers seemed to be stirring each other uneasily, and she softly invited. Brother Kagura, can I treat you to dinner tonight? Just think of it as a reward for leading me to the next level. Quote. As soon as she finished speaking, Kagura felt a terrifying aura rising behind him. He knew without asking that this was a warning from Tsunade. Turning his head to look, he saw Tsunade looking at him with a smile on her face. It was just the clenched fists and invisible momentum that made Kagura swallow a mouthful of saliva unconsciously. He immediately turned to Uchiha Jing and said, well, we are all members of the clan, so don't say thank you or not. It's getting late, and I'm a little tired, so everyone should go back and rest. After saying that, without giving her time to react, she directly pulled everyone towards the village gate. Seeing Kagura running away, Uchiha was also stunned. It's just that she stared at the figure walking further and further away. Her face no longer had that weak look, but was replaced by a playful expression. The corners of her mouth were slightly raised. She looked at Kagura in the distance and murmured, funny boy. As soon as their eyes changed, Kagura and the other 4 had already entered Kurigakure village. Facts have proved that in this world, there is not much difference between so-called countries at all. Except for the differences in the shape of the buildings and the unique landforms, these residential areas and shops are basically the same as Konoha. If there is any obvious difference, it might be that there are more seafood products here. As the 4 of them walked, they discussed the next itinerary. Jiraiya, needless to say, naturally planned to find the bookstore here. As for Orochimaru, after hearing Tsunade say that she wanted to go shopping and buy clothes, she immediately said that she was a little tired and wanted to go back to the hotel to eat and rest. Seeing his companions walking away from him one by one, Kagura cursed in his heart for his lack of loyalty as he followed Tsunade tiredly. There was no way. He had been going through various battles in the past 2 days, and he basically didn't sleep for long last night. At this time, Kagura felt that if he could be given a bed, he would be able to lie down and fall asleep in the next second. Looking at the excited Tsunade in front of her, Kagura had to sigh. It seems that no matter which world they are in, these women seem to have endless energy when it comes to shopping and buying clothes. Tsunade has obviously gone through many battles, so how can she still look full of energy now? Feeling Kagura's steps slow down, Tsunade looked back and saw a tired face. She pouted her mouth in dissatisfaction, but as she rolled her eyes, as if she thought of something, she suddenly revealed a sinister smile. She turned around and moved closer to Kagura, pressing herself almost completely against Kagura. He whispered into Kagura's ear, don't be so lethargic. Can I try on those clothes for you later? Kagura, brother. Some warm air penetrated into Kagura's ears as she spoke, making him feel numb all over his body. Hiss, how could this girl learn this trick? But if you say this, then I won't be tired anymore. In fact, Tsunade is not making trouble unreasonably. You must know that she is still wearing that backless dress. If it weren't for Kagura's vest to help cover her up, she might not be able to walk into Kurigakure village so freely now. The 2 walked on the street for only 5 minutes before they found a women's clothing store. As soon as I walked in, a female salesperson walked over to me. Looking at the 2 boys and girls, the salesperson's eyes brightened significantly. As an experienced salesperson, she directly took Tsunade to the side and began to introduce the clothes in her store. No matter what world you are in, some things never change. Abandoned, Kagura began to look for a necessary artifact in the clothing store, a chair. Kagura, who was looking around, suddenly had his eyes lit up and walked straight towards a bamboo chair. As soon as I sat down, I found a young man sitting next to me. The two nodded to each other in tacit understanding, then their eyes widened and they began to stay in a daze. On the other side, Tsunade was holding a piece of clothing in her hand, her face flushed with embarrassment. When the salesperson on the side saw her like this, she covered her mouth and smiled softly and said, "Give yourself some courage, I think he will definitely like you wearing this suit." But Tsunade lowered her head and thought for a long time, and finally picked up another item and walked into the fitting room. A few minutes later, Kagura, who was bored, suddenly heard Tsunade's call. He quickly got up and walked towards the fitting room. Just as he came over, Tsunade had already changed her clothes and came out. Looking at Tsunade in front of her, Kagura's eyes gradually opened as wide as a bull's eye, and her entire gaze became straight. Just because Tsunade is currently wearing a black tight-fitting swimsuit with a small circle of lace embellishment on the crotch. Isn't this the famous Shikusui swimsuit from Sakura Country on Blue Star? Looking at Kagura's eyes that seemed to want to eat her, Tsunade bowed her head in rare shyness. In fact, the store clerk just recommended her another more revealing swimsuit. It's just that Tsunade, who has received a good education from her family since childhood, really finds it difficult to accept the exposed three-point posture. It took me a lot of courage to put on the suit I was wearing. But she doesn't know that this kind of swimsuit that seems conservative but can actually fully show off her figure is often more attractive to teenagers. Some didn't dare to look directly at Kagura's aggressive eyes, so she lowered her head and asked softly, "Isn't this pretty?" Kagura, who finally came to her senses after hearing the question, swallowed unconsciously, and nervous Kaido. "Looks great." After a pause, he suddenly asked, "But why do you want to buy a swimsuit? Don't you want to buy a combat uniform?" Hearing Kagura's question, Tsunade frowned, raised her head and asked, "Didn't I just tell you that tomorrow we will take Jiraiya and the others to play on the beach and take a rest?" After hearing this, Kagura vaguely remembered that something like this happened on the road just now. Although the Land of Fire also has a coastline, they who have been living in Konoha village rarely have the opportunity to touch the sea. But this is not the case in the Water Country, which is a huge island country. There are several good beach attractions near Kurigakure village. Tsunade, who had done her homework in advance, naturally would not miss it, so she just excitedly proposed that everyone should go there together tomorrow to relax. Seeing Kagura's suddenly enlightened look, Tsunade naturally knew that this guy didn't pay attention to what she was saying just now. Looking at Tsunade, whose cheeks were already bulging, Kagura felt a little dizzy. Fortunately, Kagura, who has been born in 2 lifetimes, still has some experience in coaxing little girls. An hour later, looking at the shriveled puppy-shaped wallet and several large bags of clothes in her hands, Kagura felt that she would have to work hard to complete tasks to make money after returning. The next morning, Tsunade broke into the room of Jiraiya and Orochimaru while they were still sleeping. Before the two of them were fully awake, Tsunade dragged them to the beach one by one. The beach facilities of this era cannot be compared with those of Kagura on Blue Star, but some necessary facilities are still there. In addition to the necessary changing rooms and bathing rooms, there are even some stalls selling snacks on the beach. There is no pollution in this world, and these beaches truly restore their most ecological side. As ninjas, Kagura and others have indeed not had a chance to relax in recent years. This can be regarded as a rare vacation for the 4 of them. The 4 of them put on their clothes and looked at the beautiful scenery with clear water and young sand in front of them. A trace of comfort flashed in their eyes. Jiraiya, who was still a little sleepy, suddenly shouted and rushed into the sea wearing a pair of big pants. The 3 people on the shore smiled at each other and joined in. 2 hours later, Kagura walked alone along the coastline to a remote place. Not long ago, he left everyone on the pretext of going to the bathroom. Of course, he didn't really want to go to the toilet, but finally couldn't help but escape from Tsunade. Usually, Tsunade liked to stick to Kagura, and would hold his arm from time to time. But usually everyone wears combat uniforms, so Kagura didn't feel much about it. But today was different. Although Tsunade was only wearing a Shikusui swimsuit, Kagura was also only wearing a pair of large underpants. The key is that Tsunade didn't realize anything was wrong at all, and kept holding Kagura's arm according to her usual habit. The feeling of almost naked close contact made Kagura, whose body was still in the growth stage, unable to hold down the gun. You can't blame him. No matter what his mental age is, Kagura's body is being dominated by strong hormones at this time. These physiological reactions are not something he can control just because he says he can. In desperation, he could only use urine to escape from there, hoping to calm down. But the restlessness was not so easy to suppress, so he walked along the coast and came to a remote corner unknowingly. Unlike the beach just now, the coastline here has obvious changes. The fine white sand disappeared and was replaced by a coast composed of huge rocks. Kagura, who had finally calmed down, suddenly felt another kind of restlessness from deep within her body. Don't get me wrong, this time it was due to the restlessness of the two-tailed beasts in his body. Before he could react, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of him. That huge body, densely packed with sharp teeth, is clearly the watermelon mountain pufferfish ghost. He looked at Kagura solemnly and warned. Further ahead is the forbidden area of Kurigakure village. I hope you won't make it difficult for me. Hearing his warning, Kagura was slightly stunned. Seeing the other party's increasingly solemn look, he knew that maybe the other party had misunderstood something. Kagura quickly raised her hands and explained innocently. Don't get me wrong, I really didn't mean to explore your secrets intentionally. My partner and I were just relaxing on the nearby beach and I happened to be nearby. Quote. Listening to Kagura's explanation, the watermelon mountain puffer ghost looked at him suspiciously. However, before he could continue to speak, a monster's roar suddenly came from the distance. Hearing that roar, the face of Zigwashan pufferfish ghost changed. He no longer cared about Kagura, and just said hurriedly. I hope what you said is true, but then, please get out of here. After saying that, he ignored Kagura and turned around to leave. Looking at the watermelon mountain blowfish ghost going away, Kagura reached out and rubbed her chin, thinking deeply. He didn't have the big sword Samahata with him. He was familiar with the plot and knew very well that in fact it was a living knife. And in addition to its special characteristics, there is also an important detail in the plot introduction. Samahata was originally a small fish that followed Three Tails and was responsible for helping Three Tails absorb and consume chakra. It is usually attached to Three Tails' belly, responsible for cleaning up the residue, sucking food from his belly, extracting a large amount of chakra, and then sending the chakra back to his body. Combined with the restlessness of the two-tailed beasts in his body, it is not difficult to guess the owner of the roar just now. Kurigakure actually released Three Tails from the seal so early. Is this planning to find Jinchuriki? You must know that the reason why Senju Hashirama was able to sell the tailed beasts to the countries was precisely because he joined forces with the Uzumaki clan leader and had the ability to seal all these tailed beasts. Those countries got the tailed beasts that had been sealed. After all, if it was a time bomb, who would give money to buy it? So since Kurigakure village will unblock Three Tails, it must have a purpose. Three Tails, this is one of the more memorable tailed beasts in Kagura's impression. It's not about its strength, but because it is one of the many triggers for Obito's darkening in the plot. After all, if it weren't for it, Obito wouldn't have witnessed Nohara Lin's death at the hands of Kakashi, and all subsequent plots wouldn't have happened. Although he wanted to go up and investigate at this time, he also knew very well that even though there was no one around him, he must have Jonin watching him not far away. If I really move forward without knowing what to do, then I'm afraid I will no longer be treated as a guest in Kurigakure village. With a regretful sigh, he finally suppressed his curiosity and started to turn around and return. Not long after he left, a Jonin appeared on a rock. The early morning sunlight shines through the glass of the window onto the table in the room. Throwing darts and kunai were neatly placed on it, reflecting a glimmer of light after being illuminated by the sun. A white hand suddenly appeared and carefully packed up the weapons one by one. As the last dart was put into the hidden pocket of her jacket, Kagura carefully checked her combat uniform again. After the inspection was completed and there were no flaws, Kagura turned his eyes back to the table. There was only one forehead protector left there, the one with the Konoha logo printed on it. He picked up the forehead protector and put it on his head carefully. After finishing dressing up, Kagura opened the door and walked out. In the corridor, the other three companions from Class 7 were already waiting outside. Looking at the excited or calm faces, Kagura happily said, "Let's go." Today is their third day in Kurigakure village, and it is also the day of Chunin's final exam. As soon as I walked downstairs, I saw Toshiro and other candidates also coming downstairs and gathering in front of the hotel. In front of them, there was already a Jonin from Kurigakure village waiting there. After all the candidates were gathered together, the Jonin did not speak, but directly started to walk forward. Kagura and others who were following him followed his steps and walked towards the venue of the final examination. Except for playing on the beach on the first day, they stayed at the hotel to recuperate and adjust. Among them, after Kagura insisted on applying medicine every day, the scars on Tsunade's back were basically completely healed. Apart from some bloody scabs, it was basically no serious problem. But even if they stay in the hotel every day, Kagura and the others already know today's exam venue in advance. That is located in the center of Kurigakure village, a huge building that is shaped like a blue star modern stadium. As for the reason why they know, at this time, in addition to Kagura and others, there were many local residents walking out of their homes one after another on the street, heading in the same direction as Kagura and the others. As a rare multinational joint high school entrance examination event, the senior management of Kurigakure village has already notified all residents in advance. After all, since actors from the other two countries have been invited to participate, the scene would not be pretty if there were no audience to enhance the atmosphere. For residents, they can not only watch a wonderful game, but also have the opportunity to watch movies from other countries from a distance, so they are naturally happy to go. The people pouring out from various streets gradually gathered into a torrent and entered the arena in an orderly manner. Kagura and other candidates naturally had a different entrance path than the common people. Under the leadership of Jonin, they passed through a secret passage and came directly to the middle of the arena. As these 15 candidates appeared, a burst of cheers erupted from the audience. Come on, little guys from Kurigakure village, look at them and see our strength. Work hard, try your best to show yourself. Toshiro, Lousy has brought someone to see you. Don't lose too badly. Kagura, I love you. Various cheers sounded around Kagura and others, and the huge enthusiasm made all the candidates feel a little nervous inexplicably. And judging from the content of the speech, it seemed that there were also many audiences from other two countries. Jonin, who was leading the way, looked at the nervous candidates in front of him, and rarely spoke for the first time since he appeared. Relax, just stand here and wait. You will know how to play the game later. Quote. After saying that, he left here alone. Fortunately, Kagura and others did not wait long. After just waiting for a moment, directly in front of them, in a high platform building that was obviously independent of other auditoriums, 3 people, also wearing triangular bucket hats and large cloaks, walked to the high platform one after another. These are special costumes that only actors are qualified to wear, and these 3 are the actors who represent the 3 kingdoms. Mizukage, who was dressed in blue, sat in the middle as the organizer, while Hokage and Reikage, who were dressed in red and yellow, sat on both sides. Behind both Hokage and Mizukage stood a guarding Jonin, and behind Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen stood Danzo. The guard behind Mizukage Yagura is covered in a huge hooded cloak, with an Anbu mask on his face, making it impossible to see his physical features. As for Reikage, he didn't bring any guards at all. Known as the strongest spear and the strongest shield, he does not think that any guard can protect him, but may become a burden to him. As these film-level warriors representing the highest combat power of each force appeared on the stage, the audience at the scene burst into cheers even louder than before after a brief silence. The loose robe still couldn't hide his petite figure. Mizukage stood up and walked to the front of the stands. As he raised his right arm high, the sounds at the scene gradually subsided. Under the Mizukage hat, Goji Yagura's purple-red eyes scanned the audience, and finally his eyes rested on the candidate in the middle. A somewhat immature voice, but one that could spread throughout the entire audience came from his mouth. I announce that the final Chunin exam jointly organized by the 3 kingdoms of water, fire and thunder will begin now. After saying this, he turned around and returned to his seat. Hearing the brief opening remarks, Kagura was a little uncomfortable. Compared with the speeches made by the so-called leaders on Blue Star in my previous life, this opening was no different from saying nothing. As Mizukage sat down again, a Jonin from Kurigakure village began to announce the rules of the competition to the audience on his behalf. Perhaps due to appearance considerations, the previous bald examiner did not appear. The one who read out the rules was a good-looking female Jonin. But before Kagura could take a closer look at the Jonin's appearance, he was shocked by what he read. The content of this final test is very simple. It is neither 1v1 nor a group match, but a big melee for all 15 candidates. That's right, it's a big melee that determines the outcome. There is no ranking match, and there is no skill. All the genins standing in the arena will attack everyone except themselves indiscriminately. Hokage and Hokage on the stage did not know the content of the final assessment until now. After all, as the organizer of this exam, all exam content and methods are formulated and executed by Kurigakure Village. Unless there are issues that will obviously harm the candidates, Konoha and Cloud Hidden Village will not raise any objections. After thinking for a moment, Hiruzen Sarutobi slowly spoke. Mizukage-sama, is there anything wrong with this arrangement? After all, with a big melee, only one person can successfully become Chunin in the end. This indicator is too low. Quote, although Hokage on the side did not speak, he nodded in agreement. Goji Yagura did not look at Sarutobi Hiruzen, his eyes were still staring at the candidates in the audience, but he responded. Don't worry, Hokage-sama. The rules only said that a big melee should be used, but it never said that only the one who wins in the end can become a Chunin. In the end, who can pass the assessment and be promoted depends on factors such as their character, strength, and cooperation in battle. So even if you are defeated, you will still be qualified for promotion. Quote. Upon hearing this explanation, Hokage and Hokage looked at each other. Seeing Hokage nod slightly, Sarutobi Hiruzen stopped talking and chose silence. But his frown did not relax at all, but instead became deeper. What he was worried about was not the candidates in the audience, but something else. The Mizukage in front of me. It didn't feel right to him. Having been a Hokage for several years, he had certainly come into contact with this seemingly young Mizukage-sama before. Although the naturally baby-faced Goju Yagura is a bit arrogant, he is not a cold and unkind person. But this time, the Mizukage in front of him made him feel a little strange. Shaking his head to get rid of this inexplicable uneasiness, Sarutobi Hiruzen turned his attention to the field again. Looking at the four familiar figures, a smile appeared on his face. Although it is not stated explicitly, the four members of Class 7 are Konoha's trump cards in this exam. Seeing those dear disciples standing on the field as he expected, he felt a sense of pride and expectation in his heart. Kagura, who was completely unaware of the teacher's gaze, was still shocked by the rules of the melee. The four of them looked at each other, with a hint of panic in their eyes. To be honest, before they came, they had already prepared in their minds the possibility of fighting each other. But they have never considered the situation where only one person can be determined in a melee. In the end, Kagura was the first to come back to his senses. He carefully recalled the rules he had just explained, and seemed to have seen through the question maker's thoughts and comforted. Relax, the rules just didn't say that only the last person to fight will be considered as passing the test. I'm afraid the most important thing for promotion is not the result, but what we can reveal during the battle. Quote. After hearing Kagura's analysis, the other three slowly calmed down. With Kagura's guidance, they also understood what this so-called process meant. Just when Kagura was about to communicate with them the strategy for the next battle, a long-lost system notification sounded in his mind. Kagura is very familiar with this sound. It is the sound when the system issues a task to him. But what was different from the past was that this time the sound was heard several times. Could it be that several tasks were released at the same time? With doubts, Kagura turned her attention to the mission introduction in her mind. But when he saw the content of the task clearly, his scalp felt numb, and an unprecedented fear enveloped his whole mind. When she saw the task content above, Kagura felt her heart stop and the blood in her body cooled down. This time the system released 3 tasks at once, each of which was more terrifying than the last. Mission 1. Help Mizukage Yagura escape from the control of Uchiha Madara. Mission Reward. You can randomly draw an S-level ninjutsu and understand it. Mission 2. Destroy Uchiha Madara's plan to steal 3 Tails Isobu. Mission Reward. You can start 3 Tails Tailed Beast training in advance, and immediately increase the current pupil technique progress to 100%. Mission 3. Escape from the capture of Uchiha Shizu possessed by a Fae. Mission reward. You can open the wood-style blood inheritance limit. Quote. Seeing the suffocating mission contents above, Kagura even felt a little dizzy for a moment. Uchiha Madara, the ancestor of Uchiha. Why does he appear in this Chunin exam? According to the original plot, the old man should have been hiding behind the scenes until his death, planning some conspiracies but never appeared in person in front of everyone. And among the plots he is familiar with, there has never been any plot where Uchiha Madara appears so early and snatches the tailed beast. Is it because of my appearance? Thinking of this, Kagura's heart skipped a beat. As a time traveler, he naturally knows the principle of the butterfly effect. But he never thought about how such a weak butterfly could cause such a big change. Quickly suppressing the fear in his heart, he forced himself to focus on the prompts about the task content. Help Mizukage escape Uchiha Madara's control. At this time, Kagura discovered that the third Mizukage here turned out to be Goju Yagura, the fourth Mizukage in the original work. After all, his place is too far away from the stands of those movie-level big shots, and it is such an important occasion, so the movie stars all put on the distinctive formal clothes that represent their status. This made it impossible for Kagura to see the true face of that Mizukage just now. But these are irrelevant. What is important is that this Goju Yagura is actually controlled by Uchiha's people again. In the original work, he was controlled by Obito for half his life, but here he was so easily controlled by Uchiha Madara. This guy probably doesn't have a naturally easy to control physique, so how can he be controlled by an Uchiha? As for the second mission, so the purpose of Uchiha Madara controlling Goju Yagura is to take away three tails. By the way, at this time he also recalled what happened on the beach 2 days ago, and Three Tails was now unblocked. With those eyes of Madara, wouldn't it be a matter of minutes to control the unsealed tailed beast? But what troubled him the most was the last task. That Uchiha Shizu, who is full of secrets, is actually possessed by a Fae. To explain here, many people may think that a Fae in the original work is Obito, but in fact the real A Fae is a white Zetsu. Fae is the one with the most special appearance among the white Zetsu clones, and his appearance is obviously different from other white Zetsu clones. It appears twice in the plot. The first time was when he worked with other white Zetsu to help Obito recover after being rescued by Madara. He often chatted with Obito and liked to ask him questions about Hoop. Later, when Obito pretended to be a Fae, he also perfectly played this chatty attribute. In the second Fourth Ninja War, Fae controlled Yamato, who could use wood style to resist the offensive of the Ninja Alliance. So in a real sense, Obito has been pretending to be Fae to organize operations in Akatsuki. Closing parenthesis. This Fae actually wants to capture me. But why is this? At this time, his mind began to race rapidly, recalling something that had happened recently. The memory was fixed on the tournament on that small island a few days ago. Is it because of this? At this moment, Kagura finally recalled that during the final 1-on-3 match, she had used Distinguished Heavenly Gods twice. The first time he used it was in his own body, to erase the memory of the unlucky guy who accidentally entered his body. The second time, it was the Distinguished Heavenly Gods used in order to deceive the Nara descendant into lifting ninjutsu. The second time I used Distinguished Heavenly Gods, it all happened under the eyes of that Uchiha. Others may not be able to see through it, but as a Fae, he must be aware of the specialness of his eyes. Therefore, what a Fae wants to capture is not me, but my eyes that can use Distinguished Heavenly Gods. After thinking about this, Kagura was filled with fear and regret. I'm afraid because if it weren't for the system prompt, I might not even know how I died. Regret is due to one's own carelessness. It seems that the good times of these years have made me forget how dangerous this era is, and before I know it, I have lost my original caution. Although Kagura seemed to have thought about a lot of things, in fact, only a minute had passed since he saw the system task. Tsunade and others only felt that Kagura in front of them had just finished analyzing the true meaning of this test and was about to tell them and others about the next strategy when they suddenly froze in place and became motionless. The three of them looked at each other, and finally Tsunade touched Kagura's arm tentatively. Kagura, who was immediately brought back to reality by Tsunade's touch, shuddered. The panic in his eyes had not yet faded away. He swallowed nervously and spoke in a hoarse voice. Don't pay attention to this Chunin exam anymore. Something terrible will happen later. After the game starts, the four of us will stay together, not to participate in the battle, and to save our energy. Especially that girl from Uchiha, don't mess with her. Quote. Having said this, he hesitated for a moment, and finally gritted his teeth and continued. If I encounter any danger, leave me alone if necessary. You must protect yourselves. Although it was unclear why Kagura suddenly said these words, the three of them nodded blankly due to their long-standing habit. At this time, Jonin, the woman above, has also finished explaining all the rules. She looked down at all the candidates and finally asked, "Do you have any more questions?" Seeing everyone's silence, she looked back at Master Mizukage on the high platform, and saw that the man nodded towards her with one hand on his chin. She stopped talking nonsense and looked at the candidates below and announced. In that case, then this final assessment has officially begun. Following her announcement, the 15 candidates present quickly left the place and gathered into small groups in 2s and 3s, wary of each other. Although it was a big melee, it was obvious that the genin belonging to each country unanimously chose to unite the forces of their own villages immediately. After all, even if only one person can win and be promoted in the end, he should first defeat the people from other forces before engaging in internal competition. There were the fewest ninjas in Cloud Hidden Village, only 4, and they all gathered behind Toshiro. There were the largest number of people in Kurigakure Village, with 6 people. The 3 members of the ninja swordsmen who were standing at the front were the ones standing at the front. As for Kagura, in addition to the 4 of them, there is also Uchiha Shizu. The seemingly weak girl looked around nervously. Finally, she seemed to have figured out something and slowly approached Kagura and others. But what surprised everyone was that when they saw the girl from Konoha approaching, Kagura and others took a few steps back vigilantly and looked at her with a vigilant gaze. Seeing this situation, her moving steps stopped. The look of astonishment on his face only lasted for less than a few seconds before it was replaced by a playful smile. She looked directly at Kagura, who was facing the front, the corners of her mouth turned up slightly, and her eyes revealed a dangerous look. At this time, she obviously no longer maintained that weak girl persona, and she said to Kagura, "It seems that you have seen through some things. Interesting. Those eyes of yours are really special." Hearing the words of Uchiha Shizu, Kagura and others' expressions became more solemn. The candidates from the other 2 factions also looked at each other in confusion, but no one acted rashly. Uchiha, who was among everyone, seemed not to notice other people's eyes, but still stared at Kagura's pair of Sharingan and said, "Originally, my task was just to monitor the progress of this exam. In addition, if necessary today, I wouldn't mind killing these so-called geniuses here. But your eyes seem a little different from ordinary Sharingan. I believe that if I took off your eyes and presented them to that adult would also be very happy." Listening to what she said, the expressions of all the candidates present changed. Before Kagura could speak, a genin from Hidden Kiri village shouted first. "Ha, kill us all, who do you think you are?" As soon as he finished speaking, his figure rushed out of the team over there and ran straight towards Uchiha Shizuo. The leader, Loquat Juzang, stretched out his hand to stop the man, but was still a step too slow. Just when that person rushed behind Uchiha Shizuo like a gust of wind, trying to perform some kind of ninjutsu, he suddenly felt a chill in his abdomen, as if he had been pierced by a sharp ice pick. He stared down in shock and saw that at some point, a strange object like a white branch stretched out from the girl's back and inserted straight into his abdomen. The corners of his mouth trembled slightly, as if he wanted to tell something. However, in an instant, those branches seemed to be given life, spreading crazily in his body. Along with countless spurts of scarlet blood, countless branches as white as bones broke out from his back. His body seemed to be nourished by parasitic trees, and his eyes were empty and lifeless. Countless white strips spread from Uchiha's back like a tide, forming a swirling armor that slowly and tightly wrapped her whole body, leaving only one right eye exposed. Peering through the only hole, it is a 3 Magatama Sharingan that exudes mysterious light. At this time, she is no longer Uchiha Shizu, but Ah Fei. Ah Fei glanced at the corpse behind him with disgust and complained dissatisfiedly. "You rude guy, don't you know that interrupting someone else's conversation is extremely rude?" An uneducated boy like you only deserves to be treated as excrement and become fertilizer to nourish trees. Seeing a Fae take down a candidate so easily, everyone was horrified and quickly retreated away from this strange creature. Kagura pursed her lips nervously and said, "If I pretend I didn't see anything, can you let me go and leave? Anyway, I won't be of any help to your next plan, right?" Faced with Kagura's suggestion, the off-Fae rubbed his chin with one hand as if he was really thinking about it. Within a few seconds, it answered decisively, "No. I have already reported your matter to that adult, and he is also very interested in you." After hearing its answer, Kagura, who had been tense all the time, suddenly relaxed. He stood up straight, the vigilance on his face faded, and instead showed a trace of relaxation and said to Ah-Fae, "Since there is no way out, I have no choice. In this case, let us have a good fight." Obviously, Kagura, knowing that she could not escape, had decided to fight to the death. In the stands, Sarutobi Hiruzen, who had been watching the battle, frowned. Because the distance was too far, he couldn't hear what was being said there. But after the girl killed Genin in Hidenkiri village with one blow, the strange transformation scene was still visible to them. As a pacifist in Konoha, he obviously felt a little uncomfortable with this situation of candidates dying. He looked at Mizukage aside with dissatisfaction and asked, "Even if a candidate dies, won't your invigilator take any action? If I read correctly, the one who died was Genin from Hidden Mist Village." Quote. However, faced with the Hokage's questioning, Go Tachibana Yagura looked unconcerned. He still maintained his posture of holding his chin with one hand and sitting cross-legged with his legs, leisurely Kaido. Only those who can survive death are qualified to be called ninjas. This is no house game. Quote. After a pause, he seemed to have thought of something, and pointed with one hand at a Fae off the field. He looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen with a playful expression and asked, "Do you know what that is?" Faced with this problem, Sarutobi Hiruzen could only shake his head slowly. Seeing this, Guju Yagura patiently introduced him. "That's Baiju, the biological weapon left behind on the legendary creation tree. It's the best soldier in the war." Seemingly unaware of the frowns on the side of Hokage and Raikage, he asked again, "Then do you know what Baiju said off the court?" Looking at Mizukage, who clearly had something wrong in front of him, Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo behind him looked at each other, and were secretly on guard. He followed the other person's words and asked, "Oh, what did he say?" After receiving the response, Goju Yagura laughed happily. He turned his head and stared at Sarutobi Hiruzen closely and said, "He said that your disciple has strange eyes, and he wants to take those eyes off and give them to that gentleman." After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something happy, and he burst out laughing. Sarutobi Hiruzen's heart suddenly jumped when he heard his words. He naturally knew that they were referring to Kagura's eyes. However, he did not get angry, but continued to ask calmly, "Yeah, then may I ask who that adult is referring to?" But before Guju Yagura could respond again, a voice suddenly came from directly above them. "He was talking about me." The moment that voice appeared, the entire stand was shrouded in a terrifying pressure. Everyone's expressions changed. They didn't expect that someone could quietly approach someone like them without being discovered. Third Raikage Eye, who had been silent all this time, suddenly opened his eyes angrily, and the figure that was originally sitting rushed towards the roof like a huge lightning bolt. Bang! With a loud noise, he instantly smashed a big hole in the top of the stand. The smoke slowly dissipated, and the owner of the voice gradually revealed his figure. It was a tall figure, wearing a black tight-fitting combat uniform with red laminated armor on the outside. He held a huge flame fan and looked down at the people below. Under a head of thick black hair, half of the face is exposed, revealing an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan with complex patterns. To clarify, Uchiha Madara awakened to the Samsara Eye when he was old. This is also the reason why he arranged for Obito and Nagato to resurrect himself. Closing parenthesis. Seeing that familiar face, the fear sleeping deep in their memories was once again awakened from the hearts of Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo. Even Sarutobi Hiruzen himself didn't notice that there was an unconscious tremor in his voice at this moment. "Who are you?" "You are Uchiha Madara. You are Uchiha Madara." Sarutobi Hiruzen's words were filled with unconcealable trembling, and Third Raikage's expression instantly became horrified. The figure standing above did not show many signs of aging, and stood in front of everyone like a god of war. Sarutobi Hiruzen's mind was in confusion. Of course he knew this legendary figure. As an early senior leader of the village, he knew that the establishment of Konoha village was inseparable from this person's efforts. Everyone knows about first Hokage Senju Hashirama, but few people know about Uchiha Madara's contribution during that period. However, didn't this person die in the battle with Lord Hashirama? I once witnessed his body being put into the mountains by second-generation Senju Tobarama. Now that there is no Senju Hashirama in the world, who can stop him? When thoughts emerged crazily in Hiruzen Sarutobi's mind, the proud figure finally focused his attention on him. After thinking for a moment, he remembered the origin of the person in front of him, and he smiled disdainfully. Are you that Sarutobi boy? Is it you who is the Hokage now? Ha, although that guy Tobarama is not lovable, he is pretty good. Why would he let you become a Hokage? Are the cages so weak nowadays? Facing Uchiha Madara's ridicule, Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo didn't feel the slightest bit angry. They just stood there with solemn faces, on high alert. At this time, Mizukage Yagura, who was sitting in the middle, suddenly jumped up and came to Uchiha Madara. He lowered his head respectfully and said to Uchiha Madara with great respect. Lord Madara, all plans are in place. Three Tails is currently being raised on the beach in the southeast, waiting for your reception. Quote. Hearing this, Uchiha Madara nodded slightly, turned around and prepared to leave. At this time, Third Raikage finally plucked up the courage and asked. What exactly is your purpose? Why receive Three Tails? Upon hearing this question, Madara paused slightly, and her abyss-like eyes glanced over. With just one look, Raikage felt as if the person in front of him was not a person, but an invincible beast. Seeing his expression becoming more and more serious, Madara chuckled and said. Don't worry, I have no interest in fighting with you. After Hashirama's death, there is no one in this world worthy of my help. Next, let him play with you. Oh, by the way, remember to keep Nine Tails well, I will pick it up personally in the future. Quote. After saying that, Madara pointed her index finger at Mizukage Yagura. She said no more, her body gradually became transparent, and she had obviously left this place. As he left, the coercion that had been shrouding the scene finally disappeared. Like drowning people, everyone finally surfaced and exhaled a heavy breath in unison. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked at Guju Yagura with solemn eyes and asked sternly. You actually got together with Uchiha Madara. What are you planning? As Madara left, Guju Yagura put away his respectful look and returned to his usual indifference. Kaido. You have no idea what that adult is thinking, and I have no obligation to explain it to you. Just when Sarutobi Hiruzen was about to say something else, Raikage suddenly spoke. Forget it, don't talk nonsense to him. Since they, Kurigakure, don't want the Three Tails, then we do. You rush over there first, I'll quickly subdue him here, and then go over to support you. Although we may not be able to defeat that existence, we can at least hold Three Tails in place. Hearing Ai's suggestion, Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded noncommittally. But Goju Yagura beside him laughed, looked at the two of them jokingly and said. Suppress me as soon as possible and rush over. Who gave you confidence? And, having said this, he glanced behind him. Behind him stood a guard covered in clothes. Feeling his eyes, the guard sighed helplessly. A buzzing voice came from under the mask. So troublesome. When this is done, I will ask Uchiha Madara for more money. As soon as he finished speaking, his black robe suddenly exploded, and 5 monsters with masks on their heads and their bodies made of countless black blood vessels rushed out from it. This so-called guard turned out to be the mysterious Kakuzu that Madara found from nowhere. 4 of the 5 monsters suddenly rushed out in 4 different directions like lightning. They stood firmly at the 4 corners of the entire high-rise building, and the tentacle-like blood vessels turned into palms as if they were alive, forming several handprints at an alarming speed. With the completion of the seal, the entire high platform was tightly enveloped by a square purple flame barriers. Later, the 4 monster casters built a small barriers inside to protect themselves like an iron wall. This is the famous 4 purple flame formation. Seeing the purple barriers surrounding them like a dragnet, the three people trapped inside instantly understood the enemy's intentions. Sarutobi Hiruzen and I had a tacit understanding and lifted up the obstructive shadow-style robe. Obviously, it would be as difficult for them to even take a step here without defeating the enemy in front of them first. Danzo silently pulled out the long sword on his back, his eyes as sharp as a hawk, staring straight ahead. I concentrated lightning-style chakra on his whole body, covering his whole body with chakra and lightning, as if he was wearing an invincible armor condensed by lightning. Rays of lightning converged on his right hand like a dragon, forming an indestructible sharp hand knife with his hand. As for Sarutobi Hiruzen, he directly summoned the monkey demon and transformed it into a golden cudgel, holding it tightly in his hand. On the other side, Goji Yagura had already taken out a stick-like weapon decorated with green flowers behind him, and looked at the three of them as if he was facing an enemy. Beside him, the only remaining clone of Kakuzu had blood vessels all over his body, and the stretchable black lines tightly enveloped the three people below him like a black curtain. The atmosphere of the confrontation between the two sides is like the calm before the storm, becoming more and more solemn. A thrilling shadow-level battle is about to break out. On the other side, in the audience, the changes on the high platform were naturally seen by the ninjas of Kurigakure village. Seeing Master Mizukage, who was somehow trapped in the four purple flame formation, all the ninjas present didn't know what to do. Even if you want to ambush Hokage and Raikage during this exam, Mizukage-sama should inform them in advance, right? Now with such a formation, they can't go inside to provide support. At the critical moment, the bald Jonin stood up. He directed the crowd and said, "Everyone, Chunin and below, quickly evacuate the people here." I went there first to observe the situation, and the other Jonin immediately went to the village to gather all the Jonin who were still in the village and brought them to the scene. If you hear me clearly, please move quickly. After everyone was stunned for a moment, they finally heard his instructions clearly and everyone quickly dispersed. After several flashes, the bald examiner came to the four purple flame formation. Looking at the three film-level bosses confronting each other through the purple flame screen, he felt panic in his heart. "Mizukage-sama, why are you doing this? If we declare war on the Kingdom of Fire and the Kingdom of Thunder at the same time, our Kingdom of Water may only be destroyed." In the arena, with the changes in the stands in the distance, and the order of the bald examiner, these candidates who didn't know what was going on could only look around blankly, and around them came the sounds of people fleeing. Only Afei, as if he didn't notice anything strange, was still staring leisurely at Kagura and others in front of him. Looking up at the huge square formation over there, it said, "It seems that Madara-sama's plan has already begun, so I don't have much time left here. So, can you just follow me?" Kagura didn't respond, but a translucent steam suddenly appeared on her body. As the steam surged up, his hair stood up, his face turned an unnatural red color, and several blue electric lights appeared on his body at the same time. He actually directly opened the sixth gate of view, and activated the Chidori flow at the same time. You must know that with his current physique, opening the sixth gate rashly will face huge consequences. This also shows that he regards Afei in front of him as his strongest opponent since time travel, and is ready to fight to the death. Aware of Kagura's movements, the three people around him also made a fighting stance at the same time, standing firmly beside him. Looking at Kagura's firm gaze, a trace of regret flashed in Afei's eyes, and he murmured to himself, "It's a pity." The next second, without seeing any movement from him, the ground suddenly shattered in front of him, and a huge black shadow emerged from the ground. In just a few seconds, the huge black shadow completely appeared in front of everyone. This is a huge Buddha statue with countless giant arms. What is noticeable is that there are 5 small Buddha heads on the big head of the Buddha statue. This is Fei's unique ninjutsu, wood-style wooden golem technique. In the original drama, this technique was actually a ninjutsu that Fei could only use after possessing Yamato, but here it has been modified to meet the needs of the plot. After all, there are too few subordinates suitable for Uchiha Madara in this timeline, so we can't let the big boss fight the protagonist directly now. Fei jumped and stood directly on top of the giant Buddha, looking down at everyone. Looking at the huge Buddha statue tens of meters high in front of me, I felt a sense of oppression. At this time, except for Genin of Kurigakure, who was hesitant because he still didn't know what happened, Toshiro had already arrived at Kagura's side. After all, Hokage and Hokage can be vaguely seen on the high platform in the distance fighting side by side. At least now Konoha is a teammate on his own side. He whispered to Kagura, "Now how to do?" Kagura's eyes were fixed on the huge Buddha statue and she spoke, "Kaido. Let your weak companions quickly find a place to hide. And if you want to survive, you must fully cooperate with me." Before they could finish speaking, the giant Buddha in front of them suddenly moved. The countless arms slowly lifted up, and then rushed towards them as quickly as lightning. Fortunately, the 5 people gathered at this time were not mediocre. A few black shadows flashed past and disappeared instantly before the arm was smashed down. However, the giant Buddha's agility obviously exceeded everyone's imagination. I saw that as the giant Buddha's eyes moved, the countless arms followed the black shadows and waved rapidly. With loud bangs hitting the ground, countless dust rose up in the arena. Loquat Juzang, who was watching all this from afar, pursed his lips tightly. The companion on the side asked in surprise, "Don't we need to do something?" Loquat Juzang shook his head and looked towards the high platform in the distance. At this time, several shadow-level experts over there were already fighting fiercely, and there were waves of deafening roars. According to Master Mizukage's situation, we should assist the white monster to attack Kagura and others at this time. However, a phase previous words gave him some other ideas, so he now chose to wait and see. In the middle of the arena, the giant Buddha is like a tireless fighting machine. A full 5 minutes have passed, and the continuous attacks have not changed at all, and they have always maintained a high-frequency hitting speed. This made everyone who kept dodging gradually begin to feel a little powerless. Except for Kagura, who had opened 8 gates Dunjia, the speed of the other 4 people had obviously slowed down. Finally, Tsunade's flaw was exposed because she stepped on gravel during a dodge. How could the giant Buddha miss this rare opportunity? Several arms swung at Tsunade from different directions like a gust of wind. Knowing that she had no way to escape, Tsunade also gave up dodging. She held her head in her hands, and all the chakra in her body gathered on her arms. It seemed that she wanted to protect her head and receive the blow forcefully. Just when those giant arms were about to hit her, Kagura, wrapped in strong air waves, finally arrived in front of her. At this time, seeing Kagura standing up in front of him, the giant Buddha made a quick decision and gave up on the others. After a brief pause, countless arms changed their directions at the same time, and smashed towards the 2 of them like a mountain crushing an egg. Looking at the countless giant fists as big as houses in front of her, Kagura didn't have the slightest fear on her face. He clenched his fists, and veins popped out on his arms. As he roared, Kagura's fist swung forward like a phantom. The lightning-fast punching speed caused his fist to rub violently with the air, igniting blazing flames. The flames bursting out from the fist dyed the entire space red, as bright as the rising sun, and as dazzling as a peacock spreading its wings. This is exactly the kind of physical technique that can only be performed after opening the 6th gate, Chao Peacock. Countless flames were like peacocks spreading their tails, hitting the seemingly invincible countless giant arms. At the moment when the 2 sides collided, the entire area seemed to have been pressed on the pause button, and the originally noisy battle instantly became silent. But the dead silence didn't last long. Just a second later, on those giant arms that were as thick as towering trees, traces of cracks extended from the front to the end like spider webs. Boom! With an earth-shattering loud noise, the countless giant arms began to collapse from the front like dominoes being pushed down. The countless flames were like floods bursting through embankments, breaking through numerous obstacles and crashing violently into the huge body of the Buddha statue. As deafening explosions sounded one after another, countless wood chips and smoke emerged from the giant Buddha like a volcanic eruption. This powerful attack lasted for nearly 10 seconds, and the entire huge Buddha statue was shrouded in smoke. Kagura was a little exhausted after unleashing this all-out blow. He knelt on one knee, panting, staring at the smoke while anxiously waiting for the final result. However, the dust mist had not dissipated yet, and 5 colorful Madara lights suddenly shone in the dust mist. At this time, Kagura finally remembered something. His eyes were filled with fear, and he shouted loudly, "Toshiro, if you don't take action, we will be finished." Seeing those lights of different colors, Toshiro felt a little uneasy in his heart. He bit his lip and rushed to Kagura without hesitation. After quickly forming the seal, he slapped the ground hard. A towering earth wall rises from the ground like a giant. But it wasn't over yet. His mouth bulged and he spit out a piece of light yellow film towards the earth wall in front. This is a flexible protective film formed by Toshiro converting the chakra in his body into rubber and spraying it out from his mouth. It is also his unique ninjutsu, lava-style gomobi. He used this technique to reinforce the earth-style wall in front of him, building a solid line of defense for them. As for Jiraiya and Orochimaru, as early as when Kagura shouted that sentence, they rushed towards this side with wit. On the other side, as the smoke dissipated, everyone finally saw clearly the true face of those lights. I saw that the mouths of the 5 small heads on the big head of the Buddha statue had been opened, and the 5 rays of light were the attacks brewing in their mouths. This is another attack method of the giant Buddha, which can spit out ninjutsu with 5 different attributes: fire, thunder, water, earth, and wind. The moment Toshiro completed his defense, the 5 rays of light reached their peak. As the corners of the mouths of the 5 small Buddha statues moved slightly, ninjutsu with 5 attributes spurted out towards the earthen wall in front of Kagura. The 5 attacks merged into a giant stream in midair, hitting the small earth wall like a sea tide. Toshiro's lava style is actually a fusion of earth style and fire style. Unlike Four Tails Jinchuriki Laozi, who also has lava style, Laozi's lava style is more of a fire attribute, so its attack power is stronger. But Toshiro's lava style is more earth style, so the display of ninjutsu should be more defensive. That seemingly insignificant earth wall, when faced with the attack of the torrent of 5 ninjutsu, was like an iron sluice, steadily resisting the impact of the torrent. After nearly half a minute of confrontation, the light gradually faded away. At this time, the protective film on the surface of the earth wall had already disappeared under the impact, and even the earth wall looked pitted. Obviously, if that attack can last for a few more seconds, then this defense may not be able to hold on. However, before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the mouths of the 5 small Buddha heads lit up with light again, and they were actually preparing to launch a second attack. Seeing this scene, Toshiro's face showed a trace of despair. He turned to look at Kagura helplessly and said, "Either you show your trump cards, or you take me and run away. I really can't resist this time." He is still just a genin, not a pervert like Kagura. Just 2 seemingly simple ninjutsu had almost exhausted his chakra, and he really couldn't use it a second time in a short time. Kagura ignored him, but turned to the other 3 and nodded. After many years of teaming up, the tacit understanding between them is already needless to say. With just one look, the 3 of them instantly understood what Kagura meant. At that moment, they no longer hesitated. The 3 of them bit their thumbs at the same time, scratched their thumbs, and then slapped them hard on the ground. With 3 huge puffs of smoke, 3 behemoths appeared on the battlefield. At this moment, the name, Sannin, will appear in this world early. Chapter 71. As the 3 streaks of smoke dissipated, 3 behemoths appeared on the battlefield. 3 seemingly thin figures are standing above the heads of these giant beasts. These 3 giant beasts are none other than Jiraiya's Gamabunta, Orochimaru's Banya, and Tsunade's Katsuyu. Looking at the 3 companions standing above the psychic beast, Kagura's eyes were full of envy. Sure enough, in terms of the popularity of the appearance, this kind of psychic beast's appearance is still needed. But then he thought of his own egg, and the fiery gaze in his eyes instantly became cold. If you were to appear standing on an egg, then forget it, just go and fight honestly, we won't do these bells and whistles. Kagura complained with jealousy in her heart. On the battlefield, looking at the 10,000 snakes beside him who kept sticking out their tongues, Gamabunta yelled slightly unhappily. "Jiraiya, you stinky boy, didn't I tell you not to come out to Laozi while this stinky snake is around? Did you turn a deaf ear to my words? Believe it or not, if you summon me next time, I will appear directly on top of your head." Quote. After hearing this, Jiraiya lay helplessly on top of its head and explained. "Brother, everything happens for a reason. Just look at the current situation and then talk about it." After hearing this, Gamabunta noticed the huge Buddha statue in front of him. The huge eyes couldn't help but narrowed, and his arms subconsciously placed on the short sword at his waist. Wan Shi beside him was about to speak, but when he heard the prompt and saw the enemy in front of him, he also bent his body in a defensive posture. Tsunade gently stroked Katsuyu below and asked, "I'm going to trouble you again." On the other side, after seeing these three summoned objects that were not much smaller than himself, the Buddha was obviously stunned, and the 5 rays of light slowly extinguished. Obviously Afei didn't expect that the 3 people who were obviously just genin could have such a level of psychic beast. It rolled its eyes, and then activated chakra, and the arms on the giant Buddha that had been defeated by Kagura's blow grew back. But if you look carefully, you will find that the number of arms grown this time is obviously much less than the original ones. This is also a sad place for Afei. As a product left over from the ancient sacred tree, Baiju is actually very fragile. In fact, even in the original plot, if it were not for the support of Senju Hashirama's cell technology in the later period, the 100,000 White Zetsu would not have been able to appear on the battlefield alone during the Fourth Ninja War. As for Afei, although he is a special one, in essence, he is just a White Zetsu. The performance of ninjutsu like this relies more on the chakra of the possessed body for support. And the body it is possessing now, that Uchiha Shizu, is only in her early teens after all, so how much chakra can there be in her body for it to squander? In fact, in its original plan, it could only drive the giant Buddha to perform such a 5 ninjutsu attack once more. It's just the current unexpected situation that made it make temporary changes. Before it could think too much, the 3 giant beasts on the opposite side had already taken action first. The body of the Katsuyu under Tsunade's feet surged, and a stream of green liquid suddenly spurted out from its mouth and shot towards it. Afei quickly controlled the giant Buddha to protect its body with its arms. However, when the liquid touched its arms, a stinging sound was heard. Those liquids were obviously some strong acid secretions. After touching its arms, they corroded those arms at an extremely fast speed. In just a few seconds, the arms that had just grown back were corroded into disgrace. At this moment, a huge black shadow quickly swam over from the ground, and a huge long body wrapped around it like thunder. It was Wan Shi, who was watching eagerly from the side, who saw the giant Buddha showing a flaw and rushed over in time. As Wan Shi's body gradually shrank, a crunching sound that made people feel toothache came from the giant Buddha. Seeing this, Gamabunta stopped talking nonsense and took out the short sword from his waist. With its jump, the huge body instantly arrived in front of the giant Buddha controlled by 10,000 snakes. With a flash of cold light, it waved the short blade and slashed hard at the giant Buddha's head. It's just that for some reason, the position of the blade's slash is deviated to a certain extent. According to its route, it will cut off the heads of the giant Buddha and the 10,000 snakes behind it. Whoosh! With a sharp cutting sound, the giant Buddha's head flew out. Wan Shi, who was behind him, seemed to be aware of the danger. Before slashing the short sword towards him, he lowered his head in time to avoid the attack. Cut! When Gamabunta, who was still in the air, saw this scene, he secretly clicked his tongue in displeasure. As it landed, it leisurely inserted the knife back into its sheath as if nothing had happened. Wan Shi, who had escaped the disaster, decided not to do anything anymore. It raised its pupils and said fiercely, "Toad, did you do this on purpose?" Faced with its question, Gamabunta took a puff of the pipe in one hand and dug out earwax with his little finger in the other hand. Kaido. La la la, you must have evidence when you speak. What do you mean I did it on purpose? Some accidents are inevitable in battles. You. After hearing his answer, Wan Shi was furious and stood up in anger. However, before they could continue to quarrel, with 2 bang, bang sounds, Gamabunta and Wan Shi suddenly disappeared. It was Jiraiya and Orochimaru who were familiar with their characters who lifted the summons in time, otherwise a war would have been inevitable. It's not over yet. Kagura, who had been standing by the side, shouted, and with the chidori that had been prepared in his hand, he rushed towards the direction where the giant Buddha's head fell. Bang! As the head fell, Afei fell to the ground in a panic. But before he could stand firm, Kagura's figure like the god of war appeared in its eyes. Facing this obviously unavoidable blow, Afei knew that he had no way to resist. Just when Kagura was about to rush in front of him, it unfolded the swirling armor covering Uchiha Shizu's head. Uchiha Jing's weak and thin face was revealed, and she said with a slight cry, Brother Kagura, save me. It was Afe who planned to use Host to blackmail Kagura at the last moment. But what it didn't expect was that when faced with this scene, Kagura not only did not stop, but its speed actually increased a bit faster. PFF'd. In Afe's disbelieving eyes, Kagura's right hand holding Chidori defeated the pale armor without any hindrance and passed through its chest. Blood continued to flow along the arm, slowly dripping from the palm that penetrated its body. Afe looked at Kagura in front of him in shock and cursed. Holy shit, are you going to be so heartless? But when faced with its questioning, Kagura looked like a fool. Not to mention that lousy TM doesn't even know this Uchiha Shizune. Even if he did, at this time, who would be deceived by such a trick? You are almost dead, why do you do this to me? Just when he took out the arm stuck in the enemy's chest, he was preparing to directly kill the enemy in front of him with the next blow. A huge, earth-shaking roar of a giant beast came from a distance. This sound immediately stopped everyone present, and everyone looked in the direction of the sound. The direction from which the sound came was exactly from the southeast. Hearing the huge roar that seemed to come from the horizon, Kagura's heart suddenly thought of something. That's the southeast, where Three Tails is, so Uchiha Madara has already succeeded. Although he did not hear the previous conversation on the high platform, Kagura, who had long known the location of Three Tails, naturally also knew its location. Sure enough, just a few seconds after the roar, he heard a message from the system announcing that the mission had failed. One thing to say, among the 3 tasks issued by the system, Kagura personally thinks that the one with the most rewards is the task of preventing Uchiha Madara from taking Three Tails away. The reward for opening the Three Tails training system in advance is okay, but the most important thing is the reward that can directly increase the proficiency of the eye technique and enter the next stage. Only he knows how difficult Sharingan's upgrade is. No wonder most of the Uchiha tribesmen in the original book rely on killing their close friends to activate Mangekyo Sharingan by stimulating their brain emotions. But he also knew very well that among the 3 tasks, this one was the most difficult and almost impossible to complete. After all, if you do this mission, it means that the enemy you will face is the Uchiha Madara. He knows his own strength very well. For him now, if he meets Uchiha Madara, it will be the same as delivering food. After thinking about it, Kagura no longer thought about Three Tails things, but turned her attention back to herself. I saw that the big hole in Afe's chest that he had stabbed was no longer bleeding. The white branches from Afe's body had been filled in, acting as flesh and blood. This is also one of the characteristics of Baizetsu. Although this kind of creature has its fragile side, when they possess other people, they can play the role of 1 + 1 greater than 2. This super self-healing ability is one of them. However, this recovery also greatly consumed Afe's energy. At this time, it looked weak, and could only barely support itself from falling, and forced itself to stand in front of Kagura. He clenched his fist and unclenched it again, and the newly extinguished thunder light gathered in the palm of his right hand again. Looking at the bloody face of Uchiha, Kagura had already decided that the next blow would directly crush the enemy's head. This was not because Kagura was cold-blooded and insisted on killing the innocent tribesmen, but because he had no choice now. In fact, he tried to use distinguished heavenly gods or Tsukuyomi to control Abi from the beginning, so that he could later find a way to separate it from Uchiha Shizu. But I don't know if it's because Uchiha Shizuya possesses Sharingan, or because of Abi's own characteristics. Kagura's previously invincible genjutsu actually had no effect on Fei. Based on the concept that being kind to the enemy is cruel to oneself, Kagura can only choose to directly kill the enemy in front of her. Under Abi's slightly helpless eyes, Kagura raised her right hand and was about to kill the opponent with Chidori. A tall figure loomed over Kagura. At that moment, Kagura felt like she had fallen into an ice cellar, with the blood all over her body coagulated and unable to move at all. The Chidori in his hand was instantly extinguished. Kagura used all his strength to turn his head and look behind him. An eternal Mangekyo Sharingan with complicated patterns appeared in front of him. That man had long black hair and exuded a ruthless and cold temperament. He was none other than the returning Uchiha Madara. Just one eye that was exposed was like an endless abyss, causing everyone who looked directly at him to be inexplicably frozen. He first looked at Kagura in front of him, and then looked at Afe behind him. After a slight pause, he finally said, "Is this the Uchiha child you're talking about? Well, it's really good. But we don't have time, let's go." Quote. With that said, he walked directly past Kagura and lifted the weak Fei with one hand. Just as their bodies gradually faded away and they were about to leave, he turned back to look at Kagura and said, "Son, we will have the opportunity to meet again in the future." After saying that, the two figures completely disappeared into the air. Since Madara appeared, it was like Kagura was immobilized. It wasn't until the person disappeared that he finally collapsed on the ground. He gasped for breath while looking in horror at the direction in which the man disappeared. His instinct told him that if he hadn't thought that he was from Uchiha, he would have turned into a corpse with just a wave of his hand. At this time, the body that had reached its limit also released the 8 Gates armor in time, and he lay helpless on the ground. There is still a huge gap between me and these top experts. Tsunade and others, who had been paying attention to Kagura, finally rushed to his side at this time. Seeing Kagura lying on the ground unable to move, Tsunade shed tears anxiously. They were too far away just now, and they just saw a tall figure suddenly appear, and then suddenly disappear with the man named Fei. I didn't know what happened specifically. When I saw Kagura collapsed, I thought he had suffered some terrible injury. Fortunately, Kagura was just tired at this time and did not lose consciousness. He looked at the crying Tsunade in front of him and comforted him softly. "Don't worry, this is because of the sequelae of turning on the 8 Gates Dunjia, and I didn't suffer any fatal injuries. Even Kai in the original plot will fall into a state of paralysis and cannot move after opening the 6th door. What's more, Kagura's body has not reached the point where he can master the 6th gate. At this time, his sequelae are more severe than Kai's. Fortunately, compared to the discomfort of being sore all over his body before, Kagura just lost consciousness due to muscle paralysis at this time, but he did not feel much pain." After hearing Kagura's explanation, Tsunade immediately wiped away her tears, but immediately used a healing technique on him to at least make his numbness dissipate as soon as possible. At this time, Toshiro also brought his group of companions from Cloud Hidden Village to Kagura. Seeing them, Kagura rolled her eyes and said to him, "You and your companions, hold my hand, quickly." Although there were some doubts in their hearts, Toshiro and others still did as he was told. Just as they held Kagura's hand, their expressions changed. Because at this time, they could feel that their chakra was being continuously sucked into Kagura's body through the position of shaking hands. This is another B-level ninjutsu that Kagura obtained from the system, chakra. In fact, if the absorption speed of this ninjutsu is too slow, there is also the necessary condition of physical contact. Kagura believes that the value of this ninjutsu far exceeds the B-level positioning. Compared with the star-absorbing technique she knew in her previous life, it is a very practical ninjutsu. Although he didn't seem to use much ninjutsu in this battle, the essence of 8 Gates Dunjia is to exude a large amount of chakra by stimulating the body, thereby obtaining physical skills far beyond ordinary. So now, the chakra in his body has been basically exhausted and is in urgent need of replenishment. Of course, there are still 2 tailed beasts in his body. But don't forget, there are still several movie-level people on site. If he really dares to use the energy of those tailed beasts now, let alone how he will explain it to Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo after he goes back. Just say that Uchiha Madara, who is obviously collecting tailed beasts, might come back and take him away directly. Therefore, at this time, he can only find people like Tudai to help replenish chakra. Looking at Toshiro's questioning expression, Kagura explained sincerely, "Sorry, could you please act as a power bank?" Power bank. Facing Kagura's explanation, Toshiro felt that he had more doubts. Kagura ignored him, but closed her eyes and began to absorb faster. Because he knew very well that this crisis was not over yet. On the contrary, the biggest crisis has just begun. At this moment, the candidates from Kurigakure village, headed by Loquat Juzang, stood in front of them at some point. Looking at Kagura lying on the ground in front of him, a dangerous look flashed in Loquat Juzang's eyes. Although I don't know exactly what happened in this exam, no matter from the perspective of the exam, or from the perspective of my own Mizukage-sama on the stage, it seems that I and others should take action against these people. But Loquat Juzang has always been a very self-aware person, and his intuition told him that things may not be as simple as they appear on the surface. So when Kagura and others were dueling with a Fae, he suppressed everyone's impulse to take action and hid aside to watch coldly. In the end, it wasn't until he saw the powerful Kagura falling to the ground that he came closer and had other ideas. Seeing him approaching, Orochimaru and Jiraiya, who had been on guard, immediately stood in front of him. Loquat Juzang frowned. Just when the atmosphere of the confrontation between the two sides became increasingly tense and they were about to take action against each other, Kagura, who had been resting with his eyes closed, spoke up. He opened his Sharingan eyes, looked at the leader, Loquat Juzo, and said, "I advise you to give up your unrealistic thoughts. You should know very well that even if I can't move my body, you can't kill us with my eyes alone. What's more, my companions are not something that the genin around you can resist." Quote. After a pause, seeing Loquat Juzang's thoughtful expression, Kagura continued. "You should have noticed that your Mizukage-sama is a little different from usual. Give me some time and I will try to solve this problem. No matter what happens, this is your territory. If your Mizukage-sama is determined to destroy us in the end, wouldn't it be easier to just send Jonin to encircle and suppress us? Why do you need to risk yourself?" Hearing this, although Loquat Juzang didn't say anything, he finally chose to lead everyone to slowly retreat from here. 10 minutes later, with the help of Tsunade's healing technique, Kagura felt that the numb muscles gradually regained consciousness. With a little effort, he finally sat up. Beside him, Toshiro and 3 genin from Union Village were lying on the ground. These power banks have obviously been sucked dry by him and have lost their mobility. After instructing Tsunade and the others to protect Toshiro and the others, Kagura stood up and looked at the high platform shrouded in purple flames. A trace of determination flashed in his eyes, and he immediately set off and rushed over there. On the high platform, the battle between these shadow-level warriors seemed smaller than the formation on Kagura's side. In front of Sarutobi Hiruzen and the others, 3 people like them were standing. It's just that these people are more like faded fakes, obviously different from the real person. It is the phantom created by Godachibana Yagura water-style water mirror jutsu. These phantoms can use the same ninjutsu as their opponents and have the same power, making them very tricky. Raikage unhappily broke off a piece of coral from his body, with a trace of anger clearly in his eyes. This is the coral palm of Goju Yagura. Coral will grow on the body parts hit by his palm. This technique is extremely destructive to taijutsu ninjas. But for I, who has the strongest shield, this kind of attack can't really hurt him. It's just that he, who is irritable by nature, obviously cannot accept this situation of being beaten all the time. He looked at Goju Yagura not far away and said with dissatisfaction, "How about killing him directly?" No, Sarutobi Hiruzen beside him decisively rejected it. In fact, even though Goju Yagura, who has not yet become a Jinchuriki, is at the cage level, his strength is only relatively low. If it were a real fight for their lives, it would be absolutely impossible for him and Kakuzu, who is only 1/5 of his strength, to resist the 3 of them. The reason why the battle is going on till now is because Sarutobi Hiruzen and the others have not shown their true strength to fight at all. After all, Goju Yagura is the Mizukage of Kurigakure village no matter what. If they really kill Mizukage here, then it can be foreseen that the newly peaceful continent will start a second ninja war. But Raikage is not a person with well-developed limbs and simple mind. He certainly knows what Sarutobi Hiruzen is worried about. But through the purple flame curtain, he could already see that many Jonin from Kurigakure village had gathered outside the barriers. The flame curtain at this time was not so much trapping them as it was protecting them. Although he is very confident in his own strength, there is still a certain gap between him now and the peak strength in the original work that can block 10,000 people with one. If faced with an attack by Jonin who had gathered the entire village, he was not sure he would be able to break out of the encirclement. Dang! There was a sound of swords, and after Danzo and the monster transformed by Kakuzu struck each other, they retreated to their side. As the weakest among the 3, he has been responsible for fighting Kakuzu from the beginning of the battle. At this time, he had also begun to pant. He took a deep breath and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen and said, "When necessary, you should seize the opportunity to escape by yourself. You cannot die here now." Quote. Sarutobi Hiruzen naturally understood the meaning of his words, so he neither nodded nor refused on the spot. On the other side, the Kakuzu wearing a red mask floated next to Goju Yagura. He raised his masked head slightly and looked into the distance to the southeast. Then, a hoarse, inhuman voice came from the mask. Nearly 20 minutes have passed since that roar. Calculating the time, it seems that Madara should have taken 3 taels away from here. My work is over and it is time to leave. Quote. Hearing his words, Goju Yagura nodded in agreement. He looked at the crowd of Jonin and Kaido gathered outside the seal. You go, my people are here too. Don't worry, I will follow that adult's instructions and try my best to keep these people here. Quote. Oh, I don't care about this. Kakuzu said mockingly, and then quickly flew out behind him. Seeing the direction in which the monster was traveling, Sarutobi Hiruzen shrank his eyes and suddenly reminded him. Everyone, be careful, that monster is about to break the seal. As soon as he finished speaking, the square purple flame curtain started from the top of his head and gradually began to melt. In just a few seconds, the huge 4 purple flame formation disappeared as if it had never appeared. 5 black threads gathered together and reunited into one person. This man was covered in a huge black robe, wearing a tight black hat on his head, and a black mask underneath, completely covering his appearance. The only thing revealed was a pair of green eyes that revealed cruelty and indifference. He glanced at the gathered Kurigakure Jonin below, chuckled and said, Go help your Mizukage-sama. After saying that, he flew straight away into the distance. All the Jonin looked at each other, and finally everyone turned their attention to the person gathering at the front, the bald examiner. The bald examiner gritted his teeth and finally ordered, Go to Mizukage-sama first, and at least ensure Mizukage-sama's safety. After receiving the instruction, everyone nodded and rushed towards the direction of Mizukage Goju Yagura with him. However, just when everyone was about to leave, a blue lightning suddenly passed through the middle of them and rushed towards the battlefield over there at lightning speed. Seeing the familiar blue lightning, the bald examiner narrowed his eyes and murmured, It's him, but what can he do now? On the other side, just as the flame curtain melted away, Sarutobi Hiruzen was suddenly stunned. After a moment, he said to the 3rd generation Thunder Ninja, Can you help me resist those Jonin for 30 seconds? I'm in charge of Mizukage. Trust me, I have a way to get us out of here safely. Quote. Although he didn't know what idea Sarutobi Hiruzen had in mind, I finally nodded and agreed to his suggestion. The next second, there was a loud thunder all over his body, and he turned into a bolt of lightning and struck the 3 clones made of citrus Yagura ninjutsu in front of him. Those clones are like fragile mirrors, which will break into pieces if they are struck by eye. After doing this, I left here. Seeing Ai's leaving figure, Sarutobi Hiruzen secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and then he said to Danzo next to him. You and we have to find a way to restrain Goju Yagura for at least 10 seconds. Although Danzo frowned, he still raised the long sword in his hand for his trust in his old friend. In fact, Sarutobi Hiruzen, who looked calm at this time, was full of doubts in his heart. Just now, when the seal was lifted, a voice came into his eyes. He was familiar with that voice, because it was the voice of his beloved disciple, Kagura. Just as the flames melted away, Kagura's voice came to Sarutobi Hiruzen's ears. Sarutobi-sensei, Mizukage Yagura was controlled by Uchiha Madara using genjutsu. Find a way to suppress him, I have a way to release this control. Quote. Obviously, Kagura had already arrived outside the seal in advance at this time, ready to help Sarutobi Hiruzen and the others solve the most fundamental problem. In Kagura's view, on the one hand, he can take the opportunity to complete his mission. On the other hand, it is also for myself and others to leave the Kingdom of Water safely. Just when the mission first appeared, Kagura had a question in her mind, why did Uchiha Madara choose such a day to rob the tailed beast? You must know that since the 3 tails has been released from the seal, with Uchiha Madara's ability, he can directly control the tailed beast and take it away without anyone noticing. Why did he have to appear in front of the 3 shadows and tell everyone his purpose before leaving? Madara is not the kind of brainless villain who insists on doing cool things. However, after thinking carefully, he finally figured it out. Uchiha Madara didn't appear incidentally during the process of plundering the tailed beasts. In fact, it should be the other way around. He deliberately chose this time to appear. I deliberately chose this occasion where the three countries would jointly take the high school entrance examination and all the Kage would be present. By controlling the organizer Mizukage, I took the initiative to attack the Hokage and Raikage of Konoha and Kurigakure village. Anyway, no matter which one of the last three shadows dies, it will undoubtedly trigger a new war in this continent that has only been peaceful for a few years. Although it is unknown why Uchiha Madara started collecting these tailed beasts in advance, there is no doubt that the 5 countries in war will make it easier for him to plunder tailed beasts than the 5 countries in peace. You must know that although Madara is very strong, he is only one person after all, and it is impossible for him to push through countries one by one. If he really had this power, he wouldn't need the help of those weird ghetto statues. So in Madara's plan, how to use Mizukage to destroy other people on the scene and trigger a huge war is the real thing. Controlling 3 tails to leave is actually just a smooth action. After figuring this out, Mizukage Yagura's next behavior can be judged. Once the seal is lifted, he will definitely gather all the power of Kurigakure village to kill the 2 Kage, himself and others here. This was the biggest crisis he faced in the Chunin exam. Helping Goji Yagura escape from the control of the illusion is the only choice for him to escape from this crisis. Kagura, who had figured this out a long time ago, started to restore his chakra through those people into Shiro in advance during the period of physical paralysis. After all, he was about to stand in front of these shadow-level powerhouses, and it was impossible to activate the power of the tailed beast in his body. After his body gained some mobility, he rushed directly to the seal. Perhaps it was because he was far away, or perhaps because the Jonin's attention was drawn to the battle on the high platform. Kagura was forced to hide in front of a bunch of Jonin for nearly a few minutes. Just as the flames began to melt away, he immediately sent a message to Sarutobi Hiruzen and activated Chidori. While the group of Jonin were still hesitating, he transformed into lightning and rushed in from among the Jonin. I, who had just arrived here, looked at the lightning that passed him and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He was also good at lightning style, and with just a glance, he roughly guessed some of the principles of Kagura's Chidori move. If it weren't for the glance when the two passed by, I could clearly see the forehead protector with the Konoha symbol on Kagura's head. With Ai's skills, he is sure to be able to directly stop Kagura in that state. Konoha seems to have produced some incredible geniuses. Ai General murmured while looking at the Jonin in front of him. At this time, his shirt had already been damaged in the previous battle, revealing muscles as strong as stones. At this time, he had not yet had the embarrassing incident of being injured by his own moves, so there was no scar on his chest, and his body was as perfect as a bodybuilder's. He showed a bloody smile to those Jonin, and said with the corners of his mouth turned up. "Boys, my mission is to stop you for 1 minute. You just stand there obediently and wait for this minute to pass. Or do you want to come directly and compete with me?" As he spoke, he waved his right hand, and the exposed chakra knife drew a straight line on the ground. He pointed to the line on the sole of his foot and continued. "But let me say something ugly up front. Anyone who crosses this line will live or die. I won't hold back on you." Quote, "I have to say, this Raikage is really an honest person." Obviously Sarutobi Hiruzen only told him to resist for 30 seconds, but he seemed to be afraid that this was not enough time, so he insisted on saying it for 1 minute. The Jonin on the opposite side were frozen in place by his overwhelming aura. But since they can become Jonin, these are ruthless people who have experienced countless life and death battles. The leading bald examiner had a gloomy face and made a decision in just 1 second. Without further ado, he rushed towards Raikage in front of him. Under his leadership, the people behind him rushed forward without hesitation. Looking at the people rushing towards him, Raikage excitedly clicked his fingers and muttered, "I can finally have a good fight this time." On the other side, after looking at each other, Danzo and Hiruzen Sarutobi stopped, and they rushed towards Mizukage Yagura in front of them, one on the left and the other on the right. Seeing the two men attacking, Goju Yagura still had a calm look on his face. His attention was mainly focused on the direction of Sarutobi Hiruzen. In his opinion, the only person who could cause harm to him was the Hokage. Looking at Sarutobi Hiruzen holding the Vajra Wishful stick high, he decisively picked up his stick-like weapon and smashed it. When the sound of weapons clashing sounded, but to Goju Yagura's surprise, the seemingly ferocious Vajra Rui stick did not have the expected huge power. On the contrary, the weapon didn't have much power at all, and he just knocked it away from Sarutobi Hiruzen's hand with just one blow. On the other side, Danzo's attack also came as promised. Facing Danzo's long sword, his response seemed much simpler. He just turned slightly to dodge. At the same time, Goju Yagura's left hand enveloped a green chakra and slapped Danzo fiercely. In the previous battle, Danzo naturally knew that this was the coral palm of Goju Yagura. That's the ninjutsu that causes coral to grow on any part of the body hit by the palm of the hand. However, in the surprised eyes of Goju Yagura, Danzo did not dodge in the face of this blow, and directly resisted it with his chest raised. After forcibly resisting the move of coral palm, Danzo grinned and hugged Goju Yagura with both hands. Before Goju Yagura could react, Danzo took a deep breath and sprayed a high-pressure wind ball at Goju Yagura, who was very close at hand. It is Danzo's ninjutsu, Wind Release, Vacuum Dayama. Facing this sudden blow, Goju Yagura only had time to protect his head with his right hand holding the weapon. But this single blow to the Vacuum Dayama was like a rocket launcher, instantly sending Goju Yagura's entire body flying away. Danzo, who had used this blow, felt uncomfortable. At this time, a huge coral appeared on his chest. The roots of the coral were connected to his flesh and blood. Judging from his painful appearance, this move was definitely not uncomfortable. While Goju Yagura's body was still flying in the air, Sarutobi Hiruzen suddenly appeared in front of him. At this time, he had already finished forming the seal in his hand, and he sprayed out a violent flame at the person in front of him who was unable to move. It is the secret fire-style ninjutsu passed down from generation to generation by the Sarutobi clan, fire-style, the art of fire. Facing the flames whose temperature could incinerate almost everything, Goju Yagura had no choice but to raise the tall weapon in his hand to block it in front of him. His thin body was instantly submerged by the flames, falling rapidly towards the ground in the direction of the flames. Boom! That ninjutsu was like a curtain of fire, dyeing the entire space red. After being shot down, Goju Yagura curled up into a ball and squatted on the ground, resisting in a panic. Fortunately, this ninjutsu only lasted for a few seconds and then disappeared. Just when Goju Yagura raised his head and was about to launch a counterattack, a cage made of golden hoops suddenly appeared from the ground and trapped him in it. It was ninjutsu, the Vajra prison wall, activated by Hiruzen Sarutobi's psychic beast, the monkey demon. Goju Yagura never thought that Hiruzen Sarutobi's weapons were self-aware. The previous being knocked away was just for the ambush at this moment. Seeing Goju Yagura finally being imprisoned, Hiruzen Sarutobi and Danzo also breathed a sigh of relief silently. There was not much fear on Goju Yagura's face. He looked around, and then said disdainfully, "You don't really think this thing can trap me, do you?" However, before Sarutobi Hiruzen could speak, as a bolt of lightning appeared, a voice came from far to near. "He doesn't need to trap you for long." The figure flashed, and a figure appeared in front of the cage. The visitor was none other than Kagura, who had come all the way. He smiled and nodded to Sarutobi Hiruzen, then looked at the Tangerine Yagura inside and continued. "He only needs to trap you until I arrive, because then I will knock you down." Stare. As if hearing a joke, Goju Yagura looked up and down at Genin in front of him and said contemptuously. "Just you?" "Yes, just me." Facing his contempt, Kagura did not waver at all. The next second, a sentence that seemed familiar to both Danzo and Goju Yagura came out of his mouth. "Look into my eyes." The real Goju Yagura felt desolate in her heart at this time. He used to be proud, and facts have proven that he is indeed worthy of pride. Although he was appointed at a critical moment, he did become Mizukage, the position that represents the highest power in Kurigakure village. Unlike his predecessor who seemed to be a careless fighting maniac, he is committed to taking Kurigakure village to a new level after becoming Mizukage. So not long after he became Mizukage, he started a series of reforms of his own. Despite the opposition of the village's senior officials, he freed 3 tails from the seal. Although a suitable Jinchuriki has not yet been found, he proved that tailed beasts can be tamed. At least the 3 tails, which looked like a tortoise, had stayed peacefully in the place he had prepared for it since it was liberated and did not bring disaster to the village. In fact, he has already made a decision in his mind. If he still cannot find a suitable Jinchuriki within 10 years, then he will become a Jinchuriki himself. As an island country far away from the mainland, the water country is both lucky and unfortunate. Fortunately, they can always stay away from war easily. Unfortunately, due to this safe environment, Kurigakure is significantly weaker than other countries in cultivating the next generation. So in order to encourage the young people in the village, he gathered the 7 ninja swords that had been handed down in the village for a long time, and specially selected 7 people from those elite genin as the users of these ninja swords. Giving them the title of 7 ninja swordsmen, deliberately increased the prestige of these people in the village. All this is to set an example for the younger generation in the village and inspire these genin to be motivated. Facts have proved that he succeeded. Represented by the 7 ninja swordsmen, this year has obviously produced many young people worth looking forward to. Compared with the lifeless Kurigakure village in previous years, the village has obviously gained a vitality in recent years. In order to give Kurigakure village a greater voice among the nations, after hearing that the Land of Fire and the Land of Thunder intended to jointly hold the Chunin exam, he took the initiative to contact the 2 countries and took the initiative to play the role of organizer. In order to make Kurigakure village a success, he did not hesitate to let those 7 people take part in this exam at the same time. But just when all of this was going as he wished, what happened that night directly destroyed all his pride. It was one night a week before the Chunin exam. He had just told the 7 ninja swordsmen to be careful about the exam. After driving away the genin, he came to the beach where 3 Tails was. He always felt that he could feel the tailed beast's mood from the screams of 3 Tails. So every time after dealing with official duties, he likes to come here to relax. This night, I came to this sea area as usual, but a figure actually appeared on the beach. You know, he had listed this beach as a restricted area early in the morning, and no one except him could come here at all on weekdays. Just when he was holding the weapon cautiously, he was about to open his mouth to warn the person opposite. The figure turned around, and what caught his eye was a Sharingan with complex and gorgeous patterns. Look into my eyes. With that man's words, he gradually lost himself. At the moment when he completely lost himself, he seemed to know who the person in front of him was. That was the legendary figure that I had always heard about when I was a child, the only one who could compete with the god of ninja, Uchiha Madara. But why is he here? With this last question flashing through his mind, he fell into a deep sleep. After that night, he was possessed by Uchiha Madara. But in fact, the real him is just imprisoned in his own body, and he can clearly see everything his body does. This is not luck, but a kind of torture for him. He watched as he addressed the Madara as, "My lord." Seeing myself discussing with the enemy how to carry out all the steps in the Chunin exam, so as to kill the Hokage and Hokage who came to visit, and how to lead Kurigakure village to trigger a new round of ninja war on the mainland after killing them. Seeing himself like a puppet, faithfully serving as a pawn in that man's plan. The wolfberry in the body made Yagura feel a chill in his heart. He didn't care whether he could survive in the end, what he cared about was how many innocent people in the entire Kurigakure village would die because of him. Perhaps the only thing that made him lucky was that the seal of 6 Tails Seiken was always in the hands of the village elder, Yuenshi. In Kurigakure village, this elder, Genshi, has the same status as Mizukage. In order not to expose any flaws, Uchiha Madara only planned to plunder 3 Tails and temporarily gave up on 6 Tails. Just like that, Yagura, the wolfberry in his body, watched as he presided over the opening of the Chunin exam. I witnessed myself respectfully reporting the information to that person, trapping Hokage and Hokage and fighting with them as planned. In the end, looking at the Jonin gathered, he felt nothing but despair. He knew that the next result would be for those 2 shadows to die here. Either he and a group of Jonin paid the price with their lives, but those few escaped. But no matter what, for Kurigakure village, what awaits it is the consequences that are close to destroying the village. However, after the seal was released, the actions of the 3 people made him confused. They actually separated, and after paying a certain price, the Hokage and his guards only wanted to trap him. Just when he was confused, he saw a pair of familiar eyes on the inexplicable young man. Look into my eyes. Following this familiar sentence, Goji Yagura felt his eyes flash, and the next second the genin appeared directly in his body. Kagura stood in Goju Yagura's consciousness and looked around curiously. To be honest, this is also the first time he has entered the consciousness of a person controlled by Uchiha Genjutsu. But before he could take a closer look, he noticed the stunned Goju Yagura in front of him. He looked at Kagura, who suddenly appeared in front of him, and asked stammeringly, How did you get in? Kagura was also stunned when he heard this question. After thinking for a moment, he hesitated and said, You just came in with a whoosh. After hearing this, the veins on Goji Yagura's head popped out. What a god sound, why didn't you say it was a boom? Taking a deep breath, Goju Yagura barely suppressed his anger and asked again. Then what did you come in to do? Hearing this, Kagura instantly became energetic, and of course Kaido. Of course it's to let you out. Let me out, how to put it? Goju Yagura looked at him curiously and asked back. Oh, that's easy. As he spoke, Kagura raised his right hand and lightly poked the air in front of him. With his gentle poke, the air in front of him was like a piece of glass, with cracks appearing on it. Before Goji Yagura could react, the space in front of him was like shattered glass, shattering to the ground instantly. Along with the sound of broken glass falling to the ground, Goji Yagura's eyes suddenly went dark. Kagura gradually opened her eyes, turned her eyes slightly, and confirmed that she was lying on a hospital bed. Looking at the familiar white roof above, and then turning to look at the familiar scenery outside the window, he was sure that he was lying in Konoha Hospital at this time. For some reason, this ward seemed to be his personal one. Every time he fell down, he would always be sent to this ward. Just as he was trying to sit up, the door to the ward was opened and someone came in from the outside. But this time it wasn't Tsunade as expected, but Jiraiya, who looked bored. Seeing the awakening Kagura, Jiraiya was stunned for a moment, and then a happy expression appeared on his face. Then he stepped back, closed the door, and left the ward. Kagura sad face operator operator huh. Not long after, the door was opened again. This time Jiraiya, Orochimaru and Tsunade rushed in together. Looking at Kagura sitting next to the hospital bed, the corners of Tsunade's eyes were slightly red, and then she rushed over, buried her head on the quilt on Kagura and sobbed softly. Jiraiya and Orochimaru also approached slowly, with caring looks in their eyes. Kagura smiled at the two of them, then raised her hand and gently stroked Tsunade's hair in front of her. Fortunately, this situation did not last long. After a few minutes, Tsunade finally raised her head while rubbing her eyes. In her somewhat choked words, Kagura realized that she had been in a coma for nearly a week this time. His last memory was fixed on the scene of releasing Goju Yagura's control. As the genjutsu was released, he fell directly into a coma. There is no way, his current body cannot support himself to open the sixth gate of 8 gates Dunjia. Although Tsunade recovered a certain amount of mobility after a short treatment, it was only the result of her own strength. And although he seemed to be very relaxed in Goju Yagura's body. But you must know that it is the genjutsu control from Uchiha Madara. In order to get rid of this genjutsu, he used all his strength to activate the distinguished heavenly gods before barely breaking the illusion. On the premise that he cannot use the energy of his own tailed beast, he can only use the chakra absorbed from others. But among the 4 genin from Kumoin village, except for Toshiro, the other 3 have real genin abilities. Even if he absorbs all their energy, their chakra is pitiful. At that time, he had not considered absorbing the chakra of Tsunade and the 3 of them, but don't forget that there were people like Loquat Juzo present at the time. If even the 3 of them fall, then they and the people in Union Village will become fish on the chopping board. So Kagura, who had reached the limit of body, spirit, and chakra, fell down directly after completing the genjutsu on Godachibana Yagura, and has been in a coma until now. Because he had been sleeping for too long, Tsunade couldn't stay by his side every day. After the final discussion between the 3 of them, they decided to come over and take care of him at different times every day. It just happened to be the time when Jiraiya came to take care of him. After discovering that Kagura was awake, he immediately exited and found the other 2 companions, so the previous scene happened. After Tsunade's mood gradually stabilized, Kagura also learned about the follow-up of that day from the 3 people. After Kagura said the words, look into my eyes." At the scene, just a few seconds later, Kagura suddenly fell on the spot. After being slightly dazed, Goju Yagura in the cage looked at his hands with disbelief. Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo on the side obviously didn't know what happened, and they still looked at the Mizukage in front of them with vigilance. After Goju Yagura confirmed that she was really free from Uchiha Madara's control, she didn't show much excitement. Looking at the two people who were still vigilant in front of him, he simply threw away the weapon in his hand and said, "Well, I have been liberated from control, and there is no point in continuing to fight with you. Can you get me out of here first?" However, upon hearing his words, Sarutobi and Hiruzen looked at each other but did not dare to make any move. Seeing this, Goju Yagura smiled helplessly and continued, "I have really regained myself. If you continue to drag me on, those Jonin from our village may rush over later. Maybe it was too late for me to stop it then." Quote, maybe it was because he felt that what he said was right, or maybe it was because of his trust in Kagura. After Sarutobi Hiruzen lowered his head and thought for a moment, he decided to unlock the Vajra prison wall. The monkey demon returned to its original form and stood beside Sarutobi Hiruzen, looking at Goju Yagura in front of him with a wary expression. Seeing this, Goju Yagura didn't care, raised his legs and walked forward slowly. When passing Kagura's fallen body, he couldn't help but cast a glance at this genin. As if recalling what he had experienced inside his body before, he said to Sarutobi Hiruzen, "You, Konoha, have some pretty good futures." After saying this, he walked straight through the two of them and walked towards the Jonin in Kurigakure village not far away. Sarutobi Hiruzen couldn't help but have a proud smile on his face after receiving the appreciation. When Go Tachibana Yagura came to the battlefield between Reikage and those Jonin, the battle on the scene was in full swing. I, who had no restrictions, had a heartfelt smile on his face. At his feet lay several immobile Jonin. But even though he had said harsh words before, regardless of life or death, it was obvious that he still held back subconsciously. At least it can be seen from the rising and falling chests of those people that those lying down are at least still alive. Just when he was fighting in full swing, Goju Yagura's cold voice came from behind him. "All Jonin in the Kurigakure village obey my orders and stop them all." It has to be said that it is the nature of ninjas to obey orders. After Go Tachibana Yagura's quiet voice came out, all the Jonin present immediately stopped attacking. Reikage, who just thought he had finished warming up, suddenly realized that there was no one in front of him. He looked around confusedly, and finally saw Goju Yagura behind him. He narrowed his eyes, and then said as if he suddenly realized. "That kid Sarutobi succeeded, so you are in control." Before he could finish his words, Goju Yagura interrupted with an unhappy look. "Okay, everything is over. I will give you an explanation later." After saying that, he no longer paid attention to I, but gave the order to the Jonin. "Okay, please step back and maintain order at the scene." The leading bald examiner was slightly stunned, and finally asked bravely. "Mizukage-sama, are you okay? But we just saw you." Before he could finish his words, Goju Yagura slapped his shiny bald head angrily. Goju Yagura said with an unhappy look, "It's none of your business, can't we just have some of us gesticulating on it on a whim? Why are you always making a fuss there and calling so many people here? You take these people and get out of here, lousy." Obviously, he, who was already arrogant, was controlled by Uchiha Madara using genjutsu as Mizukage, and he could not say it on the scene no matter what. This is why he just wanted to interrupt Reikage. Izaran is not an idiot. He noticed something and folded his hands on his chest. He looked at the Goju Yagura in front of him without saying a word and taught his men a lesson. As a result, this Chunin exam ended in such a farce. As a party to Konoha and Cloud Hidden Village, in the end, after Goju Yagura took the initiative to offer a lot of compensation, he left the Kingdom of Water with satisfaction. Of course, Sarutobi Hiruzen and I didn't dwell too much on the matter of compensation. After all, they knew very well that as Mizukage, Goju Yagura would probably face a lot of trouble after losing 3 tails. So just like that, Kagura, who was still in a coma, was carried out of the Kingdom of Water. Kagura, who was sitting on the hospital bed and learned the whole story, couldn't help but sigh in relief. In his opinion, the fact that people like him can survive Uchiha Madara's plan is already their greatest victory. Correct. Just when Kagura was feeling emotional, Tsunade next to him suddenly smiled at him and congratulated. Congratulations on your promotion to Chunin. Congratulations on your promotion to Chunin. Following Tsunade's congratulations, Jiraiya and Orochimaru on the side also proudly puffed up their chests. Seeing this, how could Kagura not know that these friends of his had also been promoted to Chunin? A grand Chunin exam turned into a farce in the end, but the evaluation and results should still be there. Just before they left, there was a brief meeting between Hokage, Hokage and Mizukage. The last three decided to make the final selection based on the performance of each candidate when the accident occurred. The four of them, Kagura, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru, performed extremely well against Fei, and were undoubtedly unanimously recognized by the three of them. As for Toshiro, he also played an outstanding role during the war and was finally qualified for promotion. As for the others, in the end, he was defeated without any surprise. Even if Mizukage wanted to take sides this time, there was nothing he could do. From the beginning of the battle to the end, those people from your Kurigakure village actually stood by with their hands folded and watched. You can just pretend to fight Kagura and the others. In the end, Konoha village became the biggest winner, with a total of 4 people promoted to Chunin. Although there is only one Union village, seeing Ai's smile before leaving was enough to satisfy him. As for the Kurigakure village as the organizer, they could only swallow the duck eggs bitterly. However, this also caused Goju Yagura to secretly make a decision in his heart when the results were announced, and to adopt more severe special training for these genin. Especially those 7, especially those 6 ninja swordsmen, he had already thought of a hellish training plan in his mind. At this time, Loquat Juzang and others still don't know what kind of horrible life they will live in the near future just because of their previous misjudgment. Since Kagura's coma this time was only due to physical and mental overdraft, there was no trauma. So the day after he regained consciousness, he was able to be discharged from the hospital smoothly and returned to his home. After bidding farewell to Tsunade and others, Kagura looked at the small house in front of her that was small but made her feel at ease, and her body truly felt relaxed. Since I had been away from home for nearly half a month, the room was already covered with a layer of dust. After putting down her luggage, Kagura thought for a moment, then rolled up her sleeves and started cleaning the room. At this time, Kagura was extremely grateful that his house was not very spacious. After only half an hour, he completed the general cleaning. After wiping the sweat from her head and looking at the obviously brand new house, Kagura felt very happy. He does not have any misophobia, but he is also a person who has certain requirements in life. He did not expect the place where he lived to be spotless, but he wanted to keep it at least minimally tidy. At this time, he looked out the window. It was almost evening, and the sun was beginning to approach the distant horizon. After thinking for a moment, he decided what to eat for dinner tonight and walked out of the house. While walking on the street, greeting acquaintances whom he had not seen for a long time, Kagura walked towards the market with ease. Over the years, he would always insist on cooking his own meals as long as time allowed. On the one hand, it is the deep-rooted philosophy from Blue Star that makes him have an inexplicable rejection of cup noodles. On the other hand, even though he has traveled through time for a long time, he is still not used to the taste here, and still likes the Chinese food in his impression. Because of this, over the years, Tsunade and the other 3 have regarded his place as another canteen. Every time after completing a mission or training, they would always find various excuses to come over to him for a meal. If he hadn't just been discharged from the hospital today, these 3 people would be too embarrassed to eat. I'm afraid Kagura would have a headache now about what to cook tonight to satisfy these people's stomachs. This may also be a factor in Tsunade's attachment to him. To capture a person's feelings, you must capture his stomach. This sentence is obviously equally valid for girls. As it was getting late, Kagura quickly bought the ingredients and returned to his home. As night fell, the sound of cooking food also sounded in his living room. He wanted to be lazy tonight, so he chose the easiest hot pot. Of course, it has to be called sukiyaki here. This is perhaps one of the few local delicacies that Kagura is accustomed to eating. Melt the butter in the pot, then put the purchased high-quality beef in the pot and cook for tens of seconds. After pouring the sauce, add the corresponding vegetables. Just cover the pot and wait for 5 minutes before you can open the lid and enjoy your meal. He picked up a large amount of beef and put it into his mouth with satisfaction, feeling the refreshing sensation of the juices exploding in his mouth. Although he was happy, he couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Compared with this sweet sauce, he missed the spicy hot pot in his previous life even more. After all, this kind of taste is okay if you eat it occasionally, but it is still a bit bland if you eat it for a long time, without the excitement of spicy hot pot. In this way, Kagura enjoys the food alone and feels this wonderful time of her own. Not long after, Kagura burped with satisfaction as she looked at the empty iron pot in front of her. Just when he was lying on the ground ready to rest for a while before cleaning up, there was a knock on the door. Before Kagura could say anything, the man said directly, "Uchiha Kagura, the clan leader invites you to come to the shrine to discuss matters." Hearing this, Kagura frowned. The leader of the Uchiha clan at this time was naturally not the Uchiha Fugaku, who was only 7 or 8 years old, but an old man who was unknown in history. I heard that this tribesman was once a tribesman of the same generation as Uchiha Madara. When Uchiha Madara proposed to leave Konoha, he was the representative who expressed the wishes of the tribesmen who wanted peace and led all the tribesmen to stay in the village. After the duel between Uchiha Madara and Senju happened, it was this old man who relied on his wisdom to allow the Uchiha family to still live safely in the village. And unlike Uchiha Fugaku, who would have a strong ethnic consciousness in the future, this patriarch had a more moderate policy towards the management of the clan. He rarely visits or controls Uchiha's people, which is one of the reasons why Kagura didn't feel much restriction from his family after traveling through time. It has to be said that it is precisely because of his policy of doing nothing that the Uchiha clan can still survive in Konoha safely during this sensitive period. After hearing the man's words, Kagura lowered his head and thought for a moment, and instantly guessed many of the clan elders' intentions. He responded softly, "I understand, go now." With that said, he straightened his clothes and opened the door. As expected, there was a member of the Uchiha clan outside the door. The man was wearing a kimono, with the family crest seal like a cattail leaf printed on the back. After looking at La, he didn't say anything and just led the way forward. Kagura didn't care, closed the door and followed directly behind him. He still knew the location of Uchiha Shrine, but in his impression, it seemed like it was his first time to go there. In fact, due to Kagura's deliberate alienation, he has never been very familiar with the clan members. This is why he wasn't too surprised when he didn't recognize Uchiha Shizuki. After passing through several streets, they arrived at the family's shrine. The man leading the way stopped in front of the door and said to Kagura, "I can't go in without the clan leader's permission, so you can go in by yourself." Kagura nodded, walked through the door and walked in. There were rows of candles on both sides of the dim corridor providing light sources. In the flickering candlelight, Kagura could barely see the Uchiha clan emblem on the wall. Quickly walking through the corridor, Kagura came to a tall room. I saw a series of rectangular wooden signs placed on both sides of the house, and there was a lit incense burner in front of each wooden sign. In the middle, there stood a huge statue wearing armor. Kagura looked at the statue carefully and felt that it looked familiar. After a while, he finally remembered the familiar source. Isn't this statue the image of the Uchiha clan performing Susanoo? Before he could think more, an old voice came from the front. "You're here." At this time, Kagura discovered that there was a slightly stooped figure standing under the statue. This man is the current patriarch of Uchiha. Looking at the white-haired appearance of the clan leader, Kagura couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Speaking of which, as someone of the same generation as Uchiha Madara, the age difference between him and Uchiha Madara is not very big. But compared to the old man in front of him, the Uchiha Madara who appeared that day still looked like a middle-aged man in his prime. Maybe it's because of the help from the piece of flesh and blood he got from Senju Hashirama. Speaking of which, if the progress in the original plot is followed, this Uchiha Madara did not die until the Nine Tails incident. According to this calculation, he was actually nearly 80 years old when he died. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't awaken to the samsara eye until his life was close to death, then he wouldn't have designed a series of strategies to take advantage of Obito and Nagato. After thinking about it, Kagura suddenly discovered a loophole. If the original plot is followed, Uchiha Madara only summoned the Geto statue after awakening the Samsara Eye. Then Geto statue was used as a catalyst to cultivate Hashirama cells to create the white Zetsu produced when Infinite Tsukuyomi was turned on last time. But why does Afei, who is Baiju, appear in front of him now? The last time they met, he witnessed with his own eyes that Uchiha Madara had not awakened the Samsara Eye. No, all this conflicts with the plot he knows. As Kagura was thinking, he suddenly thought of this fatal change. After taking a deep breath, he could only think of the only possibility, and that was that the Black Zetsu had acted in advance. Only it can help Uchiha Madara create White Zetsu in advance. But why does it act in advance? Now that the entire timeline has changed, can I still wait until the protagonists Naruto and Sasuke come out to save the world? At this moment, Kagura felt truly panicked. For him, his biggest wish after traveling through time is how to survive. But when he learned that the future in which everyone was Tsukuyomi was likely to come early, he only felt a deep sense of powerlessness. In the shrine, the Uchiha clan leader watched Kagura quietly. Although he didn't know why the genius in this clan looked thoughtful, confused and even frightened after entering the shrine. But he didn't disturb Kagura's thinking, he just stayed there quietly and watched the tribesmen. After a long time, Kagura finally gathered her thoughts and returned her attention to reality. No matter what, since the development of things has shifted, the only thing he can do is to prevent the doomsday from happening. There is highway on the other side, but isn't there me here too? Since we can guess the other party's purpose, let's not just defeat the boss, but at least slow them down so that Naruto and others can be born smoothly. Thinking of this, he turned his attention back to the patriarch in front of him. It seemed that he was aware of Kagura's change, and then the clan leader spoke. I heard that you met Uchiha Madara during the high school entrance examination. Hearing this, Kagura nodded. Kaido. Yes. The old patriarch pondered for a while before continuing. Can you tell me the whole thing in detail? Kagura thought for a while, organized her words, and then began to tell the whole incident. Kagura was not lazy and told the details of the entire incident as detailed as possible. He believed that the old man in front of him must have learned about this incident through other channels, but even so, he had to ask himself again, certainly because he wanted to hear some details that others had not mentioned. For a full 10 minutes, Kagura recounted everything from the beginning of the assessment to the end of helping Guju Yagura release control. During the whole process, the old man opposite was like a still piece of wood, without any movement. After finishing the narration, Kagura licked her dry lips and looked at the old man in front of her. At this time, the patriarch seemed to restart from the pause button, raised his hand to his mouth, and coughed twice. He looked at Kagura with admiration and said with appreciation, "You have a pair of good eyes." Hearing the same praise as Uchiha Madara, Kagura was slightly stunned. The patriarch ignored him, but turned around and looked at the statue behind him again. He seemed to be talking to himself, and seemed to whisper to Kagura. After so many years, Madara's appearance seems to have not changed much. Although we have different philosophies, I have always believed that he is a person who thinks about his people. But what he did this time? Cough, cough, cough. The patriarch did not continue talking, but kept coughing. But Kagura did understand what he meant. Indeed, Uchiha Madara in the early stage was still a qualified patriarch. Especially after the death of his biological brother, because of his brother's last words, protecting his people became his only belief. But all this changed after he asked to leave Konoha, but no one from the clan followed him, and he met the Black Zetsu. Whether it is through conspiracy to control Obito's life, or the Nine Tails incident that he planned resolutely. From the things he planned in his later years, it can be seen that he no longer has much nostalgia for the Uchiha clan. After all, Kagura didn't believe that such a scheming person would not know how much damage his series of actions would cause to the Uchiha clan living in Konoha. You must know that the Nine Tails incident was the main cause of the Uchiha rebellion. As for the Three Tails incident this time, if Kagura didn't exist, it would be impossible. So if the high-level officials of Konoha learned that Uchiha Madara had appeared afterwards, it is conceivable what kind of treatment the Uchiha family would face in the future. The scene suddenly fell into silence. The tribesman pondered for a long time before turning to look at Kagura again and said, I know very well that your child seems not to have liked being close to the Uchiha clan since you were a child. Hearing these words, Kagura was a little surprised, but her face didn't change much. After all, he knew very well that he had never concealed his feelings of rejection towards Uchiha. As the patriarch, it was impossible for him to be unaware of this. Seeing his appearance, the patriarch continued without any reaction. I don't want to force you to do anything for the tribe, and of course you have no obligation. After your parents died, you got everything through your own efforts. Knowing this, after you were promoted to Chunin this time, I rejected the clan's proposal to transfer you to the Konoha police force. I knew very well that you didn't want to go there either. But even so, I still hope that in the future of your life, if you see your clan members facing danger, you can try to help them as much as possible. Quote. Having said this, he shook his head, then turned around again and no longer looked at Kagura, but finally gave the order to expel the guest. Okay, let's go. Hearing these words, Kagura was also a little stunned. Before coming here, he had thought that he might face oppression or demands from some people in the clan. After all, an Uchiha genius who is only 12 years old and can unlock Uchiha Madara Genjutsu always seems to have some obligation to do something for the tribe. But he didn't expect that the old patriarch called him over and just asked him to describe the incident, and then let him leave after admonishing him. Although she still had some doubts in her heart, Kagura didn't say anything more. After he saluted the old clan leader in front of him, he turned and left. Just after Kagura left, the figure of the clan leader who looked at the statue still did not move for a long time. He seemed to have been thinking for a long time before he sighed slightly and said to himself, Uchiha Madara, Uchiha Kagura. The wheel of fate turns again. Where does the future of Uchiha go? After walking out of the shrine, Kagura looked back at the magnificent building, then looked up at the bright moon in the night sky, and sighed slightly. In the end, he failed to hear the one thing he wanted to know most from the patriarch, which was about Uchiha Shizuo. You know, Uchiha Madara is a person who has openly broken with the entire family, and can even be said to be abandoned by the family. Therefore, what he did in the Water Kingdom can only be regarded as personal behavior at best, and cannot involve the Uchiha clan. But that Uchiha is different. Although he didn't know that tribesman, he did some research after waking up and found that he was indeed an Uchiha tribesman living in Konoha. She is a genin who just graduated last year. Even her teacher does not know exactly when she went to the Land of Water to take the Chunin exam. Although through the testimony of Tsunade and others who had fought with a Fae, Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen should also be able to guess that Uchiha Shizu should be controlled by some kind of creature. However, even if this explanation can convince Konoha's top brass, it cannot easily gain the trust of the other two countries. It can be said that if it is not handled well, Uchiha Shizu may become a new cause of turmoil for the Uchiha clan. After all, as a member of the same clan, it is a natural guess to secretly collude with Uchiha Madara or something. This is why some clan members suggested that Kagura join the Konoha Guard. After all, as the major contributor to this incident, Kagura's participation can alleviate the suspicion of Uchiha among Konoha's top brass and the outside world to a certain extent. But it's obvious that Kagura has no interest in such security-like work. After glancing behind him worriedly, Kagura finally went straight back home. The next day, Kagura, who had just gotten up, received a notice to go to the Hokage building to meet Sarutobi Hiruzen. Kagura, who had expected this for a long time, calmly enjoyed breakfast at home and then walked out of the house calmly. In the Hokage office, looking at the proud disciple in front of him, a hint of complexity flashed in Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes. To put things into perspective, if it were not for the existence of Kagura, this incident would probably develop in the worst direction. But it was precisely because of the huge ability that Kagura showed this time that he got the attention of Konoha's top brass. After all, it's hard for you to ignore a boy who can unlock Uchiha Madara Genjutsu. Especially Danzo. He didn't know if it was because Kagura's performance stimulated him, making him seem to notice traces of certain past events. Since their return to the village, Danzo has been strongly recommending that Kagura be subject to the highest level of scrutiny. If it hadn't been for Sarutobi Hiruzen's obstruction, Kagura might have found herself in a Konoha prison instead of a hospital when she woke up. As for Sarutobi Hiruzen, he did not blindly trust his disciple. In fact, he believed more in his understanding of these disciples. He knew very well that Kagura was not a bad person, but he was definitely not a good person in the traditional sense. Such a person would never put himself in danger because of someone's plans. Based on this alone, he was certain that there was no relationship between Kagura and Madara. Looking at Kagura's leisurely expression, Sarutobi Hiruzen couldn't help but feel a surge of anger in his heart. "Brat, do you know how much saliva Lousy has wasted these days because of you? Why do you seem to be completely unaffected?" Kagura was keenly aware of the teacher's unkind gaze, and immediately changed her stance, looking like a good baby. Naturally, Kagura was not the only one who was summoned. All 4 members of Team 7 were standing in front of Sarutobi Hiruzen at this time. Looking at Kagura, who stood up straight again, and then at the other 3 people, a smile of satisfaction appeared on his face. He first congratulated everyone. "Congratulations on becoming Chunin. Although for some reasons, your promotion speed is not very fast. But it was the first time in the history of Konoha that everyone in the same class was promoted at the same time in the Chunin exam." Quote, "Oh, your village has only been established for more than 20 years, what history are you talking about?" Listening to Sarutobi-sensei's praise, Kagura below complained disdainfully. Fortunately, Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't have the ability to read minds, otherwise he would have been pissed off by Kagura sooner or later. After the pleasantries, Sarutobi Hiruzen also talked about business to everyone. He took out a scroll from under the table, handed it to Kagura and said, "This is an S-class mission, but I don't force you to accept it. I hope it is up to you to decide whether to accept this task or not." Quote. Hearing Sarutobi Hiruzen's strange words, Kagura looked at the mission scroll in confusion. But when he saw the client's name, he couldn't help but shrink his eyes. Because the client of this mission is none other than the Uchiha clan leader he just met last night. He hurriedly moved towards the mission content, which clearly stated, "Rescue Uchiha Shizu and bring him safely back to Konoha." At this time, Sarutobi Hiruzen on the side also explained to him. According to reliable reports, after escaping from the Kingdom of Water, Uchiha Shizu and Kakuzu, a suspected escaped nin from Takigakure, appeared at the border of Takino country together. We have reason to believe that the next destination of those 2 people is Longyun village. Quote. After looking at Kagura's face, he continued, "Although I didn't see Uchiha Madara with them, this mission is definitely dangerous even for Kakuzu, an S-class escaped nin. Originally, in my opinion, this task should be performed directly by Jonin. But because of the client's request, he hopes that I can first ask you if you are willing to accept it." Quote. Although Sarutobi Hiruzen was talking about you, Kagura knew very well that he was actually talking about Kagura herself. At this time, Kagura suddenly recalled what the old man said at the shrine last night. "I still hope that in the future of your life, if you see your clan members facing danger, you can try to help them as much as possible." At this moment, he finally understood the meaning of this sentence. Facing Sarutobi Hiruzen's gaze, Kagura did not answer immediately. After he raised his head, he asked about another thing. "Sarutobi-sensei, I would like to ask, now that we have become Chunin, will we no longer be able to go out on missions together as Team 7? Upon hearing his question, Tsunade, Jiraiya and Orochimaru were also slightly startled, and then their expressions became lost. Sarutobi Hiruzen chuckled lightly, and then replied, "That's natural. Now that you have become Chunin, you will also be responsible for leading the team in the future. However, if the village encounters an A-level or S-level mission, you will still be asked to form a team to execute it." Quote. Hearing this, Tsunade and others seemed to understand something, and looked at Kagura expectantly. Sarutobi Hiruzen was not surprised by this, and he knew it very well, even though this task was to ask the 4 of them for their opinions. But in fact, as long as Kagura agrees, the other 3 will never have any objections. After hearing this, Kagura lowered his head and pondered for a while, then he looked at his 3 companions and said, "How about we finally go on an S-level mission in the name of Team 7? It can also be regarded as the most perfect farewell to our group." Quote. Facing Kagura's question, the other 3 did not answer, but the smiles on their faces clearly gave their answers. Seeing this, Kagura no longer hesitated, put the mission scroll in her arms and said to Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sarutobi-sensei, please tell the client. Our 7th class has taken over this task. The reason why Kagura accepted this S-level mission was because of the advice from the clan leader and the reasons he himself said. The most important thing was because of the system prompts that came to his ears when he took over the mission scroll. As the first S-level mission he accepted, he was not surprised by the appearance of system missions. But the reward from this mission really made him a little excited. Mission: help Uchiha Jing escape from a phase control and bring him safely back to Konoha village. Mission reward: you can randomly draw an S-level wood-style ninjutsu and understand it. Quote. This is the first time that Kagura has seen a certain type of ninjutsu reward drawn by naming someone by name. But at this time, he deeply suspected that the system was filling holes. I believe that everyone will not forget the 3 tasks released by the system during the final exam of Chunin. Mission 1. Help Mizukage Yagura escape from the control of Uchiha Madara. Mission reward: you can randomly draw an S-level ninjutsu and understand it. Mission 2. Destroy Uchiha Madara's plan to steal 3 Tails Isobu. Mission reward: you can start 3 Tails Tailed Beast training in advance, and immediately increase the current pupil technique progress to 100%. Mission 3. Escape from the capture of Uchiha Shizu possessed by a Fei. Mission reward: you can open the wood-style blood inheritance limit. Quote. In addition to the task of preventing 3 Tails from being taken away, Kagura has already obtained the rewards for completing the other 2 tasks. Among them, the mission reward that opened the wood-style blood succession limit made Kagura really feel that the system was playing word games with him. Just last night, after Kagura clicked the button to get the reward with great excitement, he discovered nothing happened. There was neither a bunch of knowledge forced into his brain as he imagined, nor any physical abnormalities occurring. With the wood-style blood limit, he is the same as before he had it. If it weren't for the fact that his physical skills proficiency had increased by 20% in his attributes, Kagura might have thought that he had been deceived and was going to ask the system for an explanation. After Kagura thought carefully, she finally understood what was going on. The system is written to give you the wood-style blood succession limit, but it does not say that it will also give you the related ninjutsu. Therefore, otherwise, he would slowly understand the power of blood in his body, research and develop wood-style ninjutsu by himself. Or he can only rely on the system to directly give him the relevant powerful ninjutsu. Therefore, when she saw the mission reward, Kagura knew that it would be difficult for her to refuse this mission. Of course, in addition to having the wood-style blood succession limit last night, Kagura did not have other gains. That S-level ninjutsu lottery reward allowed him to get the ninjutsu he most hoped for at the moment. I don't know if it was some kind of divine instruction, but what he drew this time was still Sharingan's famous ninjutsu, Amaterasu. In this battle, Kagura also felt the lack of aggressive ninjutsu. Among the 3 S-ranked ninjutsu I own, Distinguished Heavenly Gods and Tsukuyomi both belong to the genjutsu type. But once faced with a special creature like a Fei, these genjutsu basically lose their effect. Even against Kakuzu, his 2 moves were no longer practical. After all, for an enemy like Kakuzu, unless you can control 5 of his clones at the same time, all your efforts will be in vain. But how could this kind of monster, which had survived from the Warring States period to the present, reveal its flaws so easily? And his only powerful 8 Gates armor is a ninjutsu with huge side effects and cannot be used frequently in battles. As for the A-level Chidori, its lethality seems somewhat insufficient on high-end battlefields. Therefore, the arrival of Amaterasu, the ninjutsu, can be said to have greatly filled in Kagura's shortcomings. But unfortunately, when he obtained this ninjutsu, Kagura felt that with his current self, there would be huge risks in releasing this ninjutsu. After all, as the original owner of this ninjutsu, Uchiha Itachi in the original work could only release this ninjutsu after possessing Mangekyo Sharingan. But even so, every time Itachi released Amaterasu, it would put a great burden on his eyes, and even accelerate his blindness. For Kagura, who now only has 3 Magatama Sharingan, this move is destined to be a killing move that can only be used once in battle. Of course, after going through the Chunin exam and the battle with Afei, Kagura's attributes have changed greatly compared to before going to the Kingdom of Water. Eye Technique: 3 Magatama Sharingan, progress 80.2%. Physical Skills: 6th gate, Gate of View, progress 93.1%. Chakra, Jhanan level 90.5% progress. Tailed Beast, 2 tails, fusion degree 80%. Physique, Wood style blood inheritance limit. In addition to the fact that the tailed beast has not been used, the tailed beast's fusion degree increases slowly. Kagura's 3 major attributes have increased to varying degrees. Especially for physical skills, after receiving the bonus of Wood style's physique, it is about to break through to the 7th gate. The scene returned to Hokage's office. Seeing Kagura and others receiving this S-level mission, Sarutobi Hiruzen also showed a smile. Although he does feel that this mission is very difficult, as a ninja, if he has the intention to retreat in the face of difficulties, it may be difficult to continue to progress in the future. However, he still did not forget to remind Kagura and everyone. Although I believe that there is a high probability that Uchiha Madara will not be in Takino country, the S-class escape Nin Kakuzu is not an opponent that can be easily dealt with. Although I have directly faced this person in previous battles, the information about his abilities revealed in that battle is extremely scarce. You must be careful about this enemy when you go on a mission this time. Remember, your mission is the controlled Uchiha Shizu. Learn to avoid combat when necessary and focus directly on mission objectives. Quote. After hearing Sarutobi Hiruzen's advice, the 4 of them nodded in agreement. Kagura is naturally very clear about Kakuzu's abilities. In fact, in his opinion, this strong man, one of the Immortal Duo, is the most difficult opponent in the Akatsuki organization besides Nagato. After all, Hidan, the other member of the Immortal Duo, is just difficult to kill. But if you know his attack method, it is actually not difficult to deal with this kind of enemy. Especially in front of him who has 2 genjutsu, Kagura is confident that he can play with him in the palm of his hand. But Kakuzu is a little different. This is an enemy that is both offensive and defensive, and also has a very high combat IQ. If it weren't for the fact that in the original work, he was temporarily stupid and faced the protagonist Naruto, or if he was willing to reserve a heart in advance during the battle, then he would not have died on the battlefield. For such a strong person, Kagura would naturally be very energetic. Now that they have accepted the mission, the 4 of them, Kagura, have to start preparing for the mission. After bidding farewell to Sarutobi Hiruzen, the 4 of them returned home skillfully and prepared their luggage. Just an hour later, the 4 of them gathered at the village gate again. Looking at his companions who were well prepared, Kagura took the lead and said without saying anything. Let's go to the country of Taki. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.